All right, ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay, but that's what show business brings. And we're going to be speaking about all the latest happenings here in the world of sports. And there's a lot going on. Football's starting up. We got a lot of baseball, Yankees, Mets, you name it. And we'll be joined with some of the gang here in a little while, including Rob Maraska and the Brute Force. Brad Weiss will be here with us in 5 minutes. But I want to do a special introduction because we don't always get a chance to have him on here. That's a very good friend, Billy McInerney. So with further ado here on the Sports Report, the number one global sports show, we have Billy McInerney. Billy, I wanted to make you feel a little special. I always do it for my wrestlers. I do it for my boxers, but wanted to at least try to do that. But how you been, my friend?
I've been good. Definitely appreciate the introduction. Yeah, I've been doing good, just nothing special going on, but
I think there's a lot of special talk going on here in the world of sports, and those New York Mets. And I mean, listen, I got to eat some crow because I was talking about the Braves and talking about, I don't know about this team, and they've won 15 out of 17, and right now they're 1-1 with the Phillies on Apple TV. So, I mean, it doesn't get any better than this as a Met fan. I can't think of a time really in my lifetime as a Mets fan that we're looking at a team like this. Maybe 2006 would be the only comparable run, but the record says this is the best team we've had since '86, and talk about it for us.
Certainly I can't. Even 2015, as fun as those last 2 months were, for the first 4 months, it was just.
We struggled. We remember we had the whole thing. The lineup couldn't hit, and John Mayberry Jr. and everybody else.
Cespedes came and hit, what was it, 17 home runs in like 30 games or something, and kind of carried into the playoffs. But this year, just start to finish, and it's funny. I was thinking about this earlier. This year, like all year, we were talking about the Mets. They're doing good, but they're not going on those like long winning streaks, long runs where they're winning. No. And now all of a sudden, they are. They're on, 15 out of 17 wins. They're tied 1-1 with the Phillies. Taking 4 out of 5 against the Braves was, beyond huge. You put, there was no distance between them before that series, and now you got.
Hey, I would have took 2 out of 5. I was on the record saying, "Listen, Billy, I would have took 2 out of 5, and I would have said, all right, I'll be happy with that, and I'd live another day." But the Mets win 4 out of 5. That doesn't get as really can't ask for anything better than that.
Yeah, 4 out of 5, and the only game you lose was when your starting pitcher, I think he hurt his hip when he caught that spike. I really think that that affected his performance that game. So. Other than that, that's such a mental knock for the Braves now. You lose 4 out of 5 to the team you're chasing, and you got to play them again in a week. So
Monday. Listen, we're looking at Monday here, right? Another 4-game series coming up here in Atlanta.
Yeah. So they have the series with the Phillies, then they have the Braves, and they have the Phillies again. They could have a 10-game lead in the division. Going into September after this run of games,
I think this is it really much. I think there's one series with the Dodgers, right? And then the rest of the schedule pretty much after this.
I think they play the Yankees again, too.
Right. There's a series with the Yankees, which I think is in 2 weeks, I want to say. Is it 2 weeks or next week? It's either one of...
I think it's 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks. So you got the Yankees, you got the Dodgers one more time, and then you look at the schedule. The Mets September, which we spoke about here on Sportswire Radio a couple different times. That schedule was almost reminded me of the 2016 schedule that they had at the end of the season, where they just load up on cupcakes.
Yeah, the Brewers might be a tough out. The Braves at the end of the year, but nothing that really
last series of the year. Yep.
No, the Nationals are the last series of the year. The because that series that was the opening series. They got to push back to the end.
Right.
But yeah, it's there's no one in September that you look at that you're like, I don't know what the Mets can beat. So, these are looking up for the Mets going down the stretch run.
Oh, there's no question about that. And I want to give a shout out to my very good friend, Mr. Anthony J. Finkel, who is in Cape Coral, Florida. Certainly I saw some of the pictures and he was riding around. What was it, like a Miami Vice car? I see him yesterday with his very good friend, Rob Lawless. Usually I'm with Anthony during the week, but he is there in the beautiful state of Florida. And what's the weather out there, Anthony Finkel? I'm sure it's 105 out there or something like that.
Like 80% humidity too.
I figured I always tell the story.
Recently, but
I always tell the story. People, and we'll get back to sports in a second. People tell me, "Oh, well, why don't you want to live in Florida?" And I say, "Well, I have a friend, Daniel Slavin, who moved down there. And he tells me that it's like what you just said, like 80% humidity for the entire year except December and January. Then it's like 60 degrees and they wear coats. It's like, oh, it's 60 degrees, but the rest of the year it's like 80 degrees and 80% humidity. But be that as it may here, but I always have to ask you this question, and obviously we'll get some of the guys' take on a little while on this, but do you think that maybe DeGrom did give the team a little bit more of a lift than maybe we anticipated, just because not so much in what he does stats-wise, not so much, obviously, Sunday's performance was definitely one for the ages until he kind of unraveled at the end of the sixth inning, but I mean, maybe he gave the guys a little bit more of a lift than anybody would have anticipated? What do you think?
I would say he did, especially the timing he came back right after the trade deadline. It was almost like trading for Jacob deGrom. So that definitely gave them a lift. And, obviously you saw their play was picked up when Scherzer came back, and then they've been on a tear since deGrom came back. So I don't think there's any question that deGrom gave him a big lift. And yeah, probably a bigger lift than I think we realized they would. It's hard when you're winning, almost every series, and you're, 20 games over 500 when DeGrom was, just come back. It's hard to say like, he's going to give them this huge lift because they're already.
Scherzer. I mean, we talked about it here. I think what were the Mets 25-16 when Scherzer went down? They went. That's what they went 25-16.
So it's almost hard to fathom like, it's going to give them a lift because they're still playing well. But I mean, they've been on an absolute tear since he came back. And by the way, was there ever really any question that Jacob deGrom was going to come back and be as good as he's been? I mean, I know he missed a year, but it's Jacob deGrom,
I mean, I think my question was, and I know we spoke about this here, and my question was, what do you get out of him innings-wise? It was never a doubt of, okay, deGrom, he's not going to pitch the way he's pitched here in these two outings, but the concern was more, well, I mean, what do you get from him in terms of how many innings?
And unfortunately, that's going to be a concern, I think, going forward with him. I'm assuming, I know he's going to opt out, but I don't think there's any chance that he ends up leaving the Mets. I think he's going to, much like Steven Strasburg in 2019, is going to be opt out and like almost immediately sign a new deal.
The Mets have to listen. The Mets have to resign him. It doesn't matter at this point.
You can't. As much as I love Max Scherzer, you can't bring in Max Scherzer for $43 million and then let deGrom walk the next without at least giving him like the best offer. If you make a better offer and he still goes somewhere else, all right.
I would have said if the Wilpons was still on the team, I would have said, yeah, you're probably right.
But the Wilpons here we wouldn't have Scherzer, so it doesn't really,
And
Escobar.
And we are joined by he's literally, ladies and gentlemen, right coming from the court. He was literally coaching a game, I think, till 8 o'clock Eastern time. And I'm eating my first meal of the day because usually it would be dinner time, 8:30. For me, it's 8:30 is like almost breakfast time. And I see the Brute Force Brad Weiss text me maybe an hour or so prior and says, hey, I'm going to be late. So I was thinking, oh, all right. Well, I guess we're not going to get him at all, but he's here literally off the court. And Mr. Brute Force, how are you there today?
Tom, I'm doing great. Unfortunately, the players, we lost by 2 tonight in the Colts game. But ultimately, I'm in a great mood. I'm so excited to be here because I definitely
want your Instagram story, by the way, on Sunday, by the way. You're like the 5th person on social media this week that did a video and mentioned my name. I was mentioned by 4 wrestling companies, I think 3 different wrestlers, and you. So at this point, you might as well join the professional wrestlers and pile in on Tom Bryce at this point. I mean, seriously.
Hey, listen, I'm entitled to this week is boy.
Billy and I were I was giving it to you pretty much almost like off the tee almost here. And John Gonzalez of the Sports Authorities Group is obviously here with us. And John wants one of those introductions, so I'll do it very quickly. So further ado here on the Sports Report, number 1, the Global Sports Show. He is the man behind the Sports Authorities. That is John Gonzalez. Hope you're happy there, John. My lungs aren't, but I hope that you're happy. So. And Mr. Gonzalez also tells you, the Brute Force, you need a razor. I don't know, does it look like you need a razor? Is he talking about the top of your head, or is he talking about the facial hair? I'm not one to talk, obviously.
He might be talking about the top of my head, but, it's always when, coaching, I got a little stressed at the end of the game. The hair starts to come down a little bit. But it's fine, John Gonzalez. I had to run here, get here quick. So I'm here, John Gonzalez. You should be happy I'm here tonight.
I'm happy you're here because Billy and I were like, geez, we're going to be shorthanded because Justin Gianelli, unfortunately, is under the weather, and Chris Bizet will not be with us also this week. And we'll get Rob Maraska probably at the 10:30 hour. So my first inclinations were, well, gee, am I going to start on time? And then I put the link in, and thankfully Billy rescued us here. So thank you for that for Billy. But certainly the Brew Force. I want to get to Fernando Tatis in a few minutes, but I did want to ask you. I mean, obviously, you were there at Citi Field, and I got to ask you, what was that like seeing Jacob deGrom live up and close for the first time in Citi Field in a long time, and certainly since before COVID?
Oh, man, it was incredible. It was absolutely electric. It was incredible. I mean, I can't think of so many words to talk about how that experience was. I mean, it was literally one of the loudest I've ever heard Citi Field in the many games that I've been to. I mean, It was loud. People were going crazy. People love this man, Jacob deGrom, and rightfully so. And I've been saying it for weeks, and everybody's going to hear this tonight. You might not hear this word any more in sports report history than tonight. But I preached it. Confidence, Tom Bryce. And I went to that game, and many Mets fans went to that game with confidence.
Well, you were telling them, boy, there's this guy, Tom Bryce. He's this odd guy. He's a sports host, and he speaks with all these people. He's got this following, but he was doubting the Mets. I'm sure, knowing you were going, hey, this guy, Tom Bryce, this crazy-looking guy, he really didn't believe in the Mets, and he's a Mets fan. I'm sure you were doing that for sure.
I don't know about that, but I will say that when they won that game, obviously everybody saw the video on Instagram.
I saw it on Facebook too, by the way.
Because, by the way, Billy McInerney, way to call it, 4 out of 5. And we kept saying last week, Tom Bryce was saying, we're just going to 2 out of 5, we'll be all right, we'll only lose the game.
Again, I'll still say that. 2 out of 5, we would have been all right. We swept the Reds.
No, but this is what we kept preaching. And what I kept saying, put them in their place, show them who's boss, make them leave, make them cry, right? And say, we are the team to beat. We are the better team. And that's what the Mets did. And when we were there Sunday, every single Mets fan I encountered, that's exactly what they wanted. They wanted to put the Braves in their place. They wanted to put them in a little bit in the rearview mirror. And seeing deGrom, I mean, how much more unbelievable could it be?
That was your first game seeing deGrom since before COVID. Am I correct in saying that?
Correct. Not only did you not see that, but you saw him throw a perfect game for 5.
Oh, my God. I mean, I think Gary Cohn was saying during the game, right, Billy, that it was actually at one point going to be the greatest pitching performance in Mets history.
I mean, they couldn't. The Braves couldn't touch him. I mean, they couldn't touch him. They couldn't hit his slider. I mean, his fastball. He threw 102 over and over again. I mean, the guy, I said it on Friday, he was going to have adrenaline. He was going to be pumped.
He was.
And he sure was. I mean, it was unbelievable. But ultimately, the crowd was going crazy, and there was this one fan who was getting absolutely ridiculed by jinxing deGrom because he said he was talking about, nobody was talking about the perfect game. And this fan all of a sudden said, deGrom has a perfect game. And right after that.
Yeah, you know what? Mr. Brufors, I'm always one of those people when they mention, I have a bunch of comments, I'll get to them. When they go, he's got the no-hitter or the perfect game, you're like, I don't want to say the explicitives here on Sportswire Radio.
Yeah, but the last thing I'll say quickly, I know we're going to talk about this plenty more later in the show, is that, listen to me, I said it, and I've said it every week, and Tom Bryce has kind of backfired on me, he talked about the history books with the Braves, and I'm getting ready for it because I got a big statement on what's about to happen this week.
I'm surprised you're going to have a voice by the time we're done here.
I will hold on to what I'm going to say about what's going to happen in Atlanta in this 4-game series.
Oh, God.
But what I will say is, I don't want to hear a peep about the past from Tom Bryce. I want to hear everything tonight.
You're still not going to get me saying. You're not going to get me and say, the Mets are going to sweep the Braves in Atlanta. That you're not going to get me say. We'll see. I mean, listen. The Mets have definitely built up a lot of capital, and I want to get to a bunch of comments. First, let me get to John Gonzalez, who says, Tom, you made my night. I feel like Andre Decker, the unforgettable Andre Decker, who, by the way, John Gonzalez, we have back on Monday afternoon here. I think 4 o'clock Eastern time. So thank you for that, Mr. Gonzalez. Justin Gianelli, who's usually with us, is under the weather, says, what's up, guys? He also says he was at 2 of his starts a year ago. Because I think he was pitching Citi Field in May.
I should have said this before. Of course, when I got to the stadium, it was actually raining, and I went into the.
I was going to say, did you get caught in the rain there? I mean, I know
we just beat it. We got a little wet. We just beat it, but I walked in, and I went to the team store, and who do I see at the team store? Justin Gianelli buying a hat. So shout out to Justin.
I got to hear this story for a second before I get to Joey Bostrom and John Gonzalez. So did you guys plan it that way? I mean,
no.
Really? Wow.
Listen, everybody was talking to stay inside, staying in and looking at the new merchandise. And, I was just walking around. All of a sudden, I see him. So I knew he was going to be at the game. So we saw each other on a few occasions. But Justin, just like me, was cheering hard for the Mets. And
how far were you sitting from him?
Well, he was up in the 500s, and I was down in right field. So,
because you're with the cool kids crowd, right?
I guess so, but me and my friend Matt before the game, we were walking around the whole stadium. So we saw Justin at the team store, and we saw him in a few different locations.
Were you with Hurt?
No, Matt, who lives down the street from me. Matt Chase, I'll give him a shout out. He listens sometimes.
Give Matt Chase a shout. Yeah, give him a shout.
Me when I say things on the show that are ridiculous, so he's watching for sure. But what I will say is the other Matt Hurd, I will say a game with him is coming up soon. So.
And I saw yesterday, I think he was out coaching somewhere on a basketball court. And let me get to a couple of comments here. And Joey Bosch, we got to give Joey a huge shout out because it looks like he literally is standing on a beach. He says, "What's up, peeps?" And Joey Boschum, of course, longtime friend of mine. And John Gonzalez chimes in here and says, "Brute learned all about confidence from the Honorable James Dolan." So certainly,
I learned how not to be confident from him.
All right. Well, certainly that might be that as it may. And also want to give a shout out to my very good friend, Mr. Steven Saperstein, because he throws in a tweet on Twitter about those New York Jets, and he's very excited. We'll maybe get into some football later on. He says the Jets defense looks great. They gave up 2 touchdowns and just now only held the Eagles to 7 points. Okay, so thank you for that, Steve. All great stuff there. But I'll come back to the Mets. I'll come back to the Yankees. Obviously, the Yankees are kind of in a position that the Mets were in maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. But we'll come back to all that. But obviously, I want to get to the news here first about Fernando Tatis. As it's announced here by Major League Baseball that he has received an 80-game suspension without pay after testing positive for, is it Clusterball or is it Clusterball? Cluster, you know what you're probably in, a performance-enhancing substance in violation of MLB's Joint Drug Prevention and Treatment Program. His suspension is effective immediately. And thank you to Justin Gianelli for sharing this in our Sportswire group. So let me go to Billy first. And Billy, let me get your reactions on the news here about Fernando Tatis Jr. has an 80-game suspension without pay after testing positive for a performance-enhancing substance.
Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing for baseball for sure. First of all, he's an electrifying player. A good enough player that he doesn't need to be taking anything like that.
Sure.
Other than that, I mean, I think it hurts the Padres a lot, certainly. They were counting on having him come back for a stretch run. But the main thing about this, I don't understand, is how many guys need to get caught before you stop taking this stuff? Nobody's beating this system. Nobody is, slipping through the cracks. This testing the MLB does is incredibly thorough, incredibly strict. And the policy is there's no leniency in the policy. There's no wiggle room in the policy. This is what will happen if you test positive. You're not going to beat the system. The system is foolproof. And
right.
So to test positive at this point, it's just the height of either stupidity or arrogance where you think you can take it and not get caught with it. If you bring up, John's next comment, I don't disagree that I think, the suspension cost the Padres a shot at the World Series. Certainly I don't think they were the favorites, but certainly with Tatis and Soto in Atlanta, he had a shot. And now
that was going to be a good Machado, Tatis, and Soto. That would have been, I think I spoke about it here, murderer's row lineup in the NL West.
It's certainly, it's going to damage his legacy for sure, especially having, this young, having been tested positive. Certainly like Justin said in our group chat, he can't slip up again because it's a 100-game suspension. No, I'm sorry, it's a full season suspension next time. So, certainly I just think, and why? You got your money. You're one of the best players in the game. You were on the cover of MLB The Show. You are on your way to becoming a new face of baseball. And, you make this decision. It's just incredibly stupid.
Let me ask you a question, the Brute Force Bradweiss, because obviously you've been an athlete, you've been a well-to-do athlete in terms of the success that you had, and John Gonzalez is obviously absolutely right. And I wasn't even sure if the Padres were going to make the World Series anyway because we haven't seen much of Tatis. But when it comes to being in that locker room now, you're a player, and obviously you're in the Padres situation right now where you're competing to make the postseason, you're competing to win a wild card, and obviously there's a lot on the line. That's a franchise the last couple of years. They've been under a lot of pressure here. I mean, how do you react to this if you're a teammate of his?
Yeah, I'm not very happy. This is the face of the team, like Billy said. This is the face of the team. This is one of the faces of Major League Baseball. And I think everybody, whether it was a fan or even a player, all was looking forward to seeing Tatis come back. And as a teammate, I mean, how couldn't you be excited but to see one of your best players come back? It's just like the Mets with DeGrom. We've been waiting for DeGrom. DeGrom comes back, and it's almost like another lift for the Mets, like we're going to take the next step. Right. It's the same thing with the Padres. Yeah, they know they're a good team, but they know with Tatis, they're a little bit better of a team. But it's terrible news. I mean, like Billy said, how many more times do we have to hear about this? And the one thing is, of course, you guys know I always got to throw in a nice little joke or something. All right? Listen to me. It's ironic that this happens after the San Diego Padres picked up Robinson Cano. All right, because Robinson Cano might have went in there and gave Tatis some advice, all right, when it came to doing these things, and now he leaves, right, and then this happens. But the other thing that pisses me off is this. From what I've been told and what I'm listening to, he took these drugs for ringworm. Excuse me? He took it for ringworm. He did not take it for his injury. He took it for a separate thing, ringworm. Are you serious? And like the fact that, no one's on top of this, right? Where are the agents in the situations? Where are the medical professionals? Where they should know what is legal and what is not.
I never heard this before. Ringworm? I mean, it almost sounds like, what do you take, eczema cream for that? I mean, I'm not a doctor, obviously.
No, neither am I, but are you serious? How do you put yourself in this position, and how do you not know that this is not legal, right? You have to make sure before you take something, right, especially if you're Tatis, right, where you mean a lot to your team, right, and you still take the risk. You don't double check. You don't triple check, right? You do this, and then you cost your team. And not only that, right, you're costing the Padres who committed to you, right? They committed to you for many, many years. And on top of that, the last thing I'll say, because Tommy brought up a good point. Why did they trade for Soto? They didn't trade for him for the long term. They traded for him for right now, right? Because they knew they had him for 2.5 years, and Tatis coming back. This is when they wanted to win. And now you hold another year away. Basically, they're not going to win it this year, okay? They're not going to win it this year. And then next year he comes back. He's not going to even start the season because I'm pretty sure the suspension is going to go into next season.
It'll carry over into the first month of the season.
So then, again, it's going to affect the team's chemistry. It's going to affect the locker room, right? And we talk about this with other players. The locker room and leadership is important. I mean, one of your top teams and top players and top, guys shows this kind of behavior and is not responsible, right? That is not a good look. And as a teammate, right, I would be pissed off. And as a coach and management, boy, would I be upset.
Oh, my God. Especially that franchise, they've almost, guys, been like the Cleveland Browns of Major League Baseball. They bring in all these guys. They had all these prospects, no question. But this is a franchise I really feel like they're under the gun to make the playoffs. We spoke about the Mariners a couple of weeks ago with Luis Castillo, but this franchise, with all the moves, the players they brought in there, Darvish and Machado and Soto. And
all the big contracts they got now. They got a team that
they just gave money to. I mean, Hosmer in the past, they gave a lot of money to. I mean, this is a franchise. They're under the gun here. I mean, this is really a franchise here. And Joey Bostrom says they were struggling before this, and now this just kills them. Yeah, I'm with you, Joey, on that. John Gonzalez has a funny line. He says, ringworm is the only ring the Padres are going to see. Yeah, I mean, yeah, pretty much. I mean, but I guess if you have ringworm, no, doesn't that mean you're actually not getting a ring? But be that as it may. Go ahead, Billy, jump in.
Yeah, one more thing. Because you got now, remember, you have 2 more seasons of Juan Soto before he goes to free agency. Mm-hmm. Now, is he looking at Tatis and thinking, how reliable is this kid? Do I want to commit to being in San Diego for, 10, 12, 15 years, knowing that he's already been busted once and, he might decide to, double dip and go down that road again, I don't know how much it affects their chances of signing Juan Soto, but that guy is going to be able to write his ticket anywhere he wants to if he goes to free agency. So any little thing, could affect the chances of landing him long term. Obviously, they've already landed him. So, that's also a factor in, this might play a role in a long-term Juan Soto decision.
Absolutely, no question about that. And before I get to Justin Gianelli's score update here now is 2-1 Phillies over the Mets, bottom of the 10th here. So we'll see how that goes.
That's the free runner. That's almost nothing but the free runner.
Oh, listen, I was watching Yankees Mariners, and they had the free runners all right, and it took them a long time. And I'm sure Joey Bostrom was watching that as well here, and certainly the free runners didn't help either of those teams until the 13th inning. But Justin says A.J. Preller is going to find his seat getting warmer and warmer as the days go by. Yeah, I think no question. I mean, you look at the franchise right now, 63-51, and they're hanging on to a wild card spot. But that's a team I think that's got deeper aspirations than just making the postseason and playing a couple of games. They're looking to really do some damage here. And it's a franchise, again, that really hasn't had much success. We kind of malign the Mets, but the Mets here and there have had World Series appearances like every 7 or 8 years. But that's a Padres franchise that had a couple of postseason appearances at most. And Joey Bostrom says, yes, I was watching that game. Yeah, Joey, that was certainly one game that was interesting to say the least. And we are here on Sportzwire Radio speaking all things related here to the world of sports with some of my guys here, Billy McInerney, formerly of Elite Sports, and the brute force Brad Weiss, of course, the legendary SJC New York Golden Eagle and now coach for our Long Island Nets and the Brew Crew and Plainview JFK Boys JV team, and of course Level Up. And Justin reminds me here that 1984-98, the only 2 World Series appearances. Yep, that was what I thought. I thought that they'd been to the playoffs a few other times, but they got, I think, 96, 2005, 6, and obviously in the COVID year they made the postseason, and that's pretty much it. Joey Bostrom also jumps in. Yeah, 1998, that was when San Diego went to the World Series. I think they had Greg Vaughn, who hit like 50 home runs, and they had Kevin Brown and Steve Finley and steroid guy, and a whole
was
bunch.
Was Tony Gwynn still playing then?
Yeah, he was still on the team. He was kind of nearing the end of his career, but they had Trevor Hoffman, obviously. I mean, they were a good team, but certainly that's the last time the Padres had any real meaningful postseason success. You talk about 1990, the Mets even. Listen, us Mets fans, we've occasionally had postseason success, and right now, Yankees 2, Red Sox 1, bottom of the Mets. So I see Joey Bostrom's here. I know John Gonzalez is coming in here. So, I mean, guys, I got to talk about it because I know we'll get a lot into the Mets in a little while, but I mean, it's almost like the Yankees are in the shoes of the Mets were about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I mean, Billy, the Yankees, I think they'll make the postseason, but they're definitely limping right now.
Yeah, they're limping in. Look, this was sorry. This was somewhat predictable. They had a fairly easy schedule to open the season up. It's getting more difficult. They were going to stumble. They're still sitting on a 10.5 game lead. I don't believe in the Blue Jays as a great team. The Rays aren't what they used to be. I still think they're going to win the division. I think they'll win it with a sizable margin.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I don't see them beating the Astros in a playoff series, to get to the World Series. I don't see them. I see 3-4 teams in the National League that I would pick over the Yankees to win the World Series, including
the Dodgers, Mets, Braves, maybe.
Yeah, the Braves. They won it last year.
St. Louis, you like right now?
Sorry,
St. Louis.
Not so much. I don't trust their depth. I don't trust behind like Arenado and Goldschmidt in that lineup. But certainly Mets, Dodgers, and Braves are teams that I could see, beating them. So I don't know. I think Chris Wright, they need to add another bat. It seems and they feel this kind of the Yankees deal for a while where they've sort of been able to just sleepwalk 95, 100 wins, mostly beating up on bad teams. And then, they've sort of not really been able to do it in the playoffs. I think they need, another piece to really put themselves over the top, but they have to worry about getting judge time this offseason. So,
that's going to be the whole big thing there. Absolutely.
So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But yeah, I don't think they're the favorites to even come out of the American League right now. I'd say the Astros are pretty significant favorites.
Oh, I think the Astros have handled the Yankees pretty well here, and Joey Bostrom jumps in and says that Houston is going to be a problem for the Yankees. Yes, Houston, we have a problem, as they might say. Anthony Fink, who, by the way, the Brute Force right now is in Cape Coral, Florida, says Brute with exclamation point. Is it Cape Coral or is it Cape Coral, Florida? I don't even, know Florida as well. But
I thought it was
Jonathan,
Cape Corral.
okay, Cape Coral. There you go. All right. So I'm glad that I did stand corrected there. And John Gonzalez says Padres had a ton of talent in 1984, including former Yankee Craig Nettles, Goose Gossage, and still could win. Well, I think Steve Garvey was on the team as well, and they came up short in 5 games. And Justin Gianelli says Sterling Hitchcock, meaning the 1998 Pirates. I think Andy Ashby was on that team also, and Anthony Finkel says it's Cape. Is it Coral or is it Corral? I don't even know at this point. He says LOL. Listen, from the Northeast.
I did see. I want to give Anthony a shout out because I saw he had a nice little whip.
Yeah, we were speaking about that. We were speaking about almost like the Miami Vice kind of car, almost Fast and the Furious.
Yeah, that was nice. I gotta say that was nice.
I'll definitely have one of those in my next life. Definitely not on this life, but maybe in the next life I'll have one of those. But Anthony, obviously, we certainly give him a shout out. And John Gonzalez is piling on Anthony Finkel, calling him the new Cespedes. So, well, call-wise, I mean, certainly that could be the point. But, I mean, the Brute Force, the Yankees, I mean, listen, it was just a few short weeks ago. We looked at them and said, all right, they're still on 110, 112 win pace. And it was about a month and a half ago. They were on a pace that they could have surpassed the 2001 Mariners. And now they're limping right now. I mean, if you ask me if they win 100 games, I'd say I don't know. I mean, I think they'll make the playoffs. I think they'll still win the division with relative ease. But it's a Yankees team right now that looks like they've got a lot of holes, whether it's the lineup, whether it's the bullpen. And what do you make of the Yankees right now?
Yeah, if I'm a Yankee fan, I'm a little concerned right now with my team. And the one thing you didn't mention there, Tom Bryce, was starting pitching. That's a major concern for the Yankees right now because they're kind of, I got to say, they're kind of falling down to earth again with their starting rotation. Garrett Cole has not been an ace. Nestor Cortez has not been the same guy he was early in the season. Jameson Taillon, when he's been in there, has not been great. You can go down the list. I mean, they just haven't been as impressive pitching. And the one thing I got to take back from what I said last week, because I said last week about the Yankees, yeah, they're going to, the Astros are the team they're going to see, and they're just going to whip by everybody else. I'm sorry, but the Seattle Mariners just proved to me that I shouldn't have said that because I totally disrespected them because they just went out and won 2 straight series against the Yankees in New York and in Seattle.
And they needed that because they were struggling because they ran into the Astros and they kind of came back to earth a little bit after that big run, and they needed those wins.
But I think that was huge for Seattle, right? Because, one, they showed you, right, that they can beat the Yankees, right? Even though, again, the Yankees are not playing great baseball, they showed, vulnerability. They showed holes. They showed, right, against a better team. As to Billy's point, they've been winning against a lot of these weaker teams. But against the better team, right, they have struggled, right, recently, especially against the Mariners, the Astros, those type of teams. So, honestly, I'm not as confident. The only team I'm confident, I mean, they beat Minnesota every year. So if they play the Twins,
well, right now it's the Cleveland Guardians, though. It's the Cleveland Guardians that are the ones in first place.
Yeah, and listen, you know what? Cleveland's nothing to joke about either. We can have fun as much as we want, but those guys in Cleveland, including some of the players we know, like Andres Jimenez and Ahmed Rosario, have had great seasons for them. So I wouldn't just push them to the side right now and push them to the curb. Because the Yankees right now have a lot of issues. Their starting rotation, their lineup, right, besides the top guys that really struggled. And, they're still trying to find the answers. And then, like you said, the bullpen. I mean, even the best guys like Clay Holmes have not pitched that well. So, I mean, you can't be that excited if you're a Yankees fan right now. I'm not going to say I'm going to be overly worried like we all said. They're still going to make the playoffs. They're still probably going to end up being the 1 or 2 seed, right? They're still going to have one of the best records in the American League. But with the Yankees, we're never going to talk about the regular season right now because it's all about the playoffs. And if this team plays this way going into the playoffs, we cannot be as confident in them, right? And the crazy thing is, Tom Bryce, we said it weeks ago. The one person we haven't talked about at all season, is Aaron Boone.
I knew that was coming, especially as you said that. I knew that was coming.
And the one thing I got to say with Aaron Boone, pressure breaks pipes. And there's a little pressure right now on Aaron Boone because the Yankees are slipping a little bit. And again,
they're slipping as we speak. The Red Sox tied it, so they're even slipping in this game. I mean, I don't know. The Yankees are in big doo-doo right now. That's the way I say it. Listen, I would definitely be pressing.
And I just want to say this to you, Tom Brace, just to emphasize more about my confidence in the Mets. All right? Who's got the better record right now?
New York Mets.
It's impressive. I mean, considering how the Yankees started this season and how much better they were than everybody else record-wise, to tell you right now, right, in August, right, that the Mets have the better record right now is very impressive for the Mets and actually kind of upsetting for the Yankees.
And the Philadelphia Phillies, unfortunately, right after that, have defeated the New York Mets 2-1. So certainly, it's going to be predictable that obviously that does happen. Listen, the Mets would do for a loss. I mean, obviously the Mets had quite a run.
All time, Bryce. Get them all.
No, you can't, but you don't want to get swept either. You don't want to go into Atlanta and getting swept. I'm going to be honest. Just let's not get swept. That's all I would say from the Phillies. And let me get to a bunch of comments here. And Anthony Finkel says we live in life out here. Anthony Finkel, listen, Anthony, I shouldn't tell you this, but I'll tell it to you. But Steve Saperstein one day told me on the phone, man, that guy Fink. He said, I wish I had his life. That's all I'm going to say. That's all what Steve, I'll say on the air, said about the life that Anthony Finkel has. But we all wish we were living like Anthony Finkel. That's all I'll say. But John Gonzalez says Yankees came back to earth and injuries to Stanton, Carpenter, Severino. Yeah, I definitely think the Carpenter injury now is actually going to be a substantial injury. I mean, we're pretty much looking at him out for the regular season, and he very well might not even make the postseason roster at the moment. The one guy I noticed when the Yankees played Seattle was Jared Kelly. 125. And Joey Gallo, by the way, is starting to hit. I saw the other day with the Dodgers. So, I mean, predictable. And Justin Gianelli says Holmes BS, and Justin also says, and Kelenic went back down.
Yeah, he went back down.
And Joey Bostrom also says, for sure the Yankees have the better team. I'm really concerned about the Yanks. Bullpen starting pitching. I mean, for you, Billy, you agree with that, what Joey Bostrom said? Obviously, Joey's a Yankee fan. Joey's always been a realistic Yankee fan. I've known him for so many years, and Joey will always tell you what the temperature is of the team. And is it the starting pitching in the bullpen, or does the lineup need to be in there as well? What do you think?
I think it's starting pitching in the bullpen. I would say there's a few too many guys in the lineup that aren't producing. I mean, obviously the top end of that lineup, when everyone's healthy, Judge, Stanton, they have the horse at the top, but the bottom third of that lineup, even when everyone's healthy,
it's
kind of Alefa. Even Donaldson hasn't been good this year. The catcher, which catcher's name? Trevino, I think it is. He's come back down to earth. That's three guys in your lineup that just aren't giving you much offensively. In the way baseball is played today, you can't have that. The Mets have one. Whoever have the catcher de jure has been an issue for the Mets. But other than that, 1 through 8, the Mets have had a lineup that I think has more depth than the Yankees do. Plus, I think their bench is a little better than the Yankees is. I
think now with the additions they made,
So I think I do agree with that. I agree with Joey that certainly the starting pitching is a concern. And, look, Garrett Cole has not pitched well in the playoffs since coming to the Yankees. It's not like this is a guy with, playoff track records. This isn't, Madison Bumgarner stepping up his game in the playoffs. He stepped back in the playoffs. And then all of a sudden that rotation is a huge concern. A 5-game series, you're only rolling your top 3 guys. And who's that going to be? Cole, Cole, Cortez, and Jordan Montgomery. I mean,
I guess Cortez is the number 2, and then you got Frankie Montas.
Frankie Montas.
Frankie Montas would be your third.
Who didn't look great?
Montas might be your 1 going into the playoffs, honestly, the way Cole's been pitching.
I know, but it's still Cole. I mean, realistically, they're going to go with Cole. And to throw salt on the wound for Yankee fans, Joey Gallo, by the way, thanks to the crack staff for giving it to us, he's hitting 267 with the Dodgers right now with a home run, 3 RBIs.
Oh, my God.
I had to. You know what's so funny, though? I was listening to the fan the last month and a half, and everybody said, yeah, watch him go to another team and predictably play well. And that's what's probably going to happen. And Joey
the Dodgers, too.
Well, of course. I mean, that obviously helps, right? I mean,
you didn't go to the Royals or somewhere. One of the best team gets better, right?
That's how it. Listen, that's how it always goes up. And Joey Bostrom says, of course, Gallo is, and John Gonzalez says Mets have the better pitching than the Yanks. And John Gonzalez also says, I said it last week, trading Montgomery for Babe. Which you know what? Let's talk about that for a second. That's a good point that John Gonzalez made because, the brute force, you trade somebody who's a valuable part to your team in Jordan Montgomery. And Harrison Bader, no question, he's won a Gold Glove, and he might be a guy maybe that when you get into the postseason is going to be what you're looking for at helping you with your defense and maybe that intangible kind of player. But we ain't going to see him pretty much the rest of the regular season here. I mean, if you're in that clubhouse, I mean, would you feel like that you lost something there? I mean, what do you think about that? That's a good point that John Gonzalez made, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this last week, obviously. And I was supportive. I wasn't 100% supportive, but I did see the reasoning for why they went Bader for Montgomery. I know that, listen, first of all, we didn't even talk about a guy like Aaron Hicks who's been absolutely horrendous.
Oh, but was it 0 for 34 or something like that?
He's been horrible.
Oh, my God.
Bader is definitely an upgrade on that, but like you said, we might not even see him for a while. And listen, Montgomery, yeah, he's a good, solid starting pitcher right now, especially with the Yankees starting pitching. To have him every 5 days is not a bad option. He seems to be, for the most part, consistent. He's not great, but he's always consistent for the most part. And he is still young. He still has years. It is a bad loss for the Yankees. But I'm not as, upset about it, as I am with other things with the Yankees. But I still, think that they have, obviously, the pieces to get it done, but they're just not producing. And until they prove us wrong, then I could say to John Gonzalez, yeah, you're right. I mean, if we never see Bader and we see continuous struggles from Hicks, then it's going to look bad. If the starting rotation continues to struggle the way it's struggling, then we're going to continue to talk about Montgomery. But listen, when it comes to trades, I had to throw this in because I just have to, because everybody, just mentioned Jared Kelenic and batting 125, going back to AAA. Ladies and gentlemen,
I know where this is going.
I gotta say it, and people have kind of said it, I'm crazy in the past. It is dead on obvious that the New York Mets have won that trade far and furthermore now with the Seattle Mariners. I mean, the fact that we have the best closer in baseball, and they got Jared Kelenic, flopping between AAA, and batting 125. I mean, Edwin Diaz, this man has been unbelievable, and I would
Could you ever imagine, guys, and you were on the Sports Report team before in the past, and could you imagine that 3 years ago, if you would have asked us and said Edwin Diaz is the best closer in baseball, you guys would have all said to me, like most people watching and listening, you're nuts. And that's what we have right now. He's the best closer in baseball.
Oh, that's no question. No question at all. He's been unbelievable. His strikeout ratio was insane. So for me, even though you ate up Robinson Cano's money and you gave up other players, I mean, really, you look at that trade and you say Kelenic and Diaz. Those are the two big.
Oh my God!
And come on, you cannot even argue at all that the Mets are. It's not even close. The Diaz has definitely won us the trade over the Seattle Mariners.
And Justin Gianelli says, Jared Kelenic, Jay Bruce, Anthony Sorzak, Justin John. Yeah, Jay Bruce, who I think retired during COVID, I think, right? I think he retired during COVID or right after, something like that. And then Anthony Swarzak, yeah, that's a name you're going to remember in the memory banks. And Justin John. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those, listen, I mean, at the time, everyone was like, oh, my God, the Mets made a horrible trade. But Diaz also pitched horrible, but he's turned it around. And John Gonzalez also wants to remind me, Andrew Benintendi has yet to boost. Yeah, he's definitely gotten off to a very, very slow start. And just one thing on Aaron Hicks. Aaron Hicks right now is struggling so much that he has actually a higher on-base percentage than a slugging percentage. That's how right now, and thanks to the crack staff, going into action, he's got a 346 on base, but a 313 slugging. You can't win with a 313 slugging percentage, and you can't be a starting player in the major league at this point. I'm sorry, for his position, playing center field with 6 home runs in 90-plus games, and Justin Gianelli says the Dodgers are MLB rehab, turning careers around. Yeah, I tell you what, I mean, it looks like that here so far. I mean, obviously, those are some things here that we are talking about on Sportswire Radio. And if you do like what you hear from us on Sportswire Radio, I highly encourage you give us a like on Facebook at Sportswire Radio. And 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, you can listen to all of our great content on sportnarium.com/player. And obviously excited to be here with everybody as we'll hear from Rob Moroska in about 15 or so minutes. And John Gonzalez has a funny line here. He says, the brood froze. Yeah, you know what, for whatever reason, and it's so funny, because, Billy, you live also out in the suburbs, and I never seen somebody that has such bad internet than the brute force. It's not like, listen, I speak with people all the time from the other side of the pond. And in England, they have a problem with internet, right? They have Wi-Fi issues. I can understand that, right? But he lives in Long Island. He lives in probably one of the more richer places in the United States, and yet his internet and Wi-Fi is always down. I can never get it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of my Wi-Fi, but I mean, this poor guy every week.
It's like, dude, he comes on like literally like 10 times a day. He comes on the air. The brute force power-wise, listen, I'll get to baseball in a second, but I gotta say something here because I was listening to John Gonzalez say, "Oh, the brute force frozen." I mean, you live in Long Island, right? You live in Plainview. Plainview is considered to be one of the more richer places in the United States, certainly in New York. And I speak with wrestlers all the time. When they're in England, these little small towns, and I understand when their internet goes. I understand if they don't have Wi-Fi, because they're like in these little small towns where there's probably like one person in their whole town other than the house they're living in, right? So I get it, right? But you live in Plainview, Long Island. It's not like you live in like Barrow in England or Chorley, where, like I said, their town probably like they have like 5 people that live in it. What's wrong with the fact that your internet always goes out? I never understand it.
You know, Tom, I wish I had an, because normally I do have an answer to your questions, Tom Bryce, but I just don't have one. I've tried everything. All right, I've asked people in the neighborhood, how? Like, what can I do?
Okay, do your neighbors have the same problems that you
Yes.
do?
Yes, I was talking about the other day, right? I have Optimum. He's got Verizon, and he lives 1 block away from me. And we both have the same issues with our internet. So it's absolutely pathetic. I mean, they were all week long, Tom Bryce. They were repaving the roads in my neighborhood instead of.
Well, they did the same thing here. They did the same thing here. Yep.
I like that the roads are paved. All right, but please fix the internet for God's sake. It's terrible in this whole thing.
It's almost as if like Plainview's like a third world country. It's almost like Plainview's like
terrible.
These towns in England.
No, and listen, I went to people. I went around them. What do you guys have? How's your internet? And they all tell me the same thing. They have issues with it. It freezes all the time. I mean, it's ridiculous, and it pisses me off more than anything. But you know what, John Gonzalez has free government Wi-Fi. That Wi-Fi is better than mine, and I've said it. And
I was going to say, I think the free government Wi-Fi because they have.
At this point, I'm ready to do the show from Starbucks. That Wi-Fi will be better.
Well, in about 2 months or so, I might be joining you on that because I'm going through my own issues at home, and I might be doing it also from Starbucks somewhere. So we'll see all about that. And Justin Gianelli says he's not a South Shore guy. That's why. Yeah, but I don't know, man. I just thought it was so interesting to point out why almost every show that your internet goes out. It's always to me.
And it's not once. It's not twice. It's multiple times. And it just frustrates me so much. I mean, it frustrates me just as much as the New York Knicks do.
You know what? I know you're going to the Knicks are obviously a topic, but I want to talk about something that frustrates me a little bit before we get to Rob Maraska. And I wanted to spend at least about 10 minutes on football. And that's the news, obviously, of Mekhi Becton and the New York Jets. And speaking of things that frustrate me, the brute force, I mean, here we go again, huh?
Yeah, here we go again for sure. And, I forgot it was Joey Bostrom or somebody who was talking about the Jets' confidence after tonight. I'm not on the same wavelength because all I've heard about is one, obviously we talked about Becton, like you said. I mean, this guy can't stay healthy. You draft him really high. Everyone talked about, with his weight, is he going to be able to stay healthy? And obviously he's proven that he cannot do that. And at this point, it's starting to run out of confidence for the guy because he can't stay on the field. But more importantly tonight, and, again, we'll see what happens in the coming days, but I hear, and again, I didn't get to watch the game as I was coaching, but I hear Zach Wilson goes out of the game with a knee injury. And that right there has to be a bigger concern because that's your quarterback. That's the guy, right, who we're looking to take the next step. That's the guy who we have confidence in. Confidence. I can't even say it. Confidence in to win 8 or 9 games this year behind. So, with Zach Wilson's injury, again, we're going to hear more in the coming days. I don't know how serious it is. I did not get to see it personally. But I will say him coming out of the game in the first quarter of the first preseason game is a major concern for the Jets. And if he's not healthy, we can talk about all the young pieces we have and all the different things that we have. But without a quarterback, right, the guy we trust, in Zach Wilson, that's going to affect the Jets, and we might have to change our predictions going into the season.
Oh, I tell you what, I'm already worried. And Joey Bostrom says, and Zach Wilson left the game, which we just pointed out.
And non-contact, too, which is always a huge concern.
And John Gonzalez says, Brute looked like he was stoned in the previous.
Well, when I was frozen?
Yeah.
I did, of course. You know what? John Gonzalez, I know you enjoyed that. It's all right. But I'm here. All right, I'll probably freeze again. So whatever. It is what it is.
I would have thought Mr. Freeze from what was it, Batman and Robin? That was the Batman and Robin movie. Remember that was the Arnold Schwarzenegger version of Mr. Freeze, which was just a terrible movie. But that's here nor there. But I mean, Billy, Jets obviously, have some, I guess, bad luck. And what do you make of some of this here before we get to the Giants for a few minutes?
First of all, I feel off for Mekhi Becton. It seemed like he was turning a corner. He seemed to embrace playing right tackle. And not for nothing, why the hell was he out there? He was limping during the early stages of practice. This is a guy with a surgically repaired knee. Why do you not take him off field and sit him for the day or two and get him healthy? You're relying on this guy. Your depth is, your depth tackle is a guy who, gave up, 8 sacks in practice in the half of the practice after Beckman left. How do you not keep this guy, do everything you can to keep this guy healthy? They turn around, they get Dwayne Brown. That'll help them some there. But, the bigger concern is Zach Wilson, and I don't want to speculate on what this is until we know more, but certainly anytime there's a non-contact knee injury, your first thought is ACL.
Yep, I was going to say the same thing.
If he misses the year, Joe Flacco, Mike White, do you trade for Jimmy Garoppolo? Maybe you win 6 games instead of the 3 you'd win with those 2. I think without Wilson, the Jets are looking at another lost season, unfortunately.
And it wasn't even like the season was going to be exactly a winner to begin with.
We're looking at maybe fighting for that 7th seed in the playoffs if things broke right. If Wilson's not playing, I think you're looking at another high draft pick.
Yeah, you know what? Here we go again here, and John Gonzalez also says, "Don't worry, Brute. Jared Goff has looked good so far."
I knew he was going to bring up Detroit. And before I left for my game tonight, I actually did watch. The game was on TV. They were playing the Atlanta Falcons, so the dumbest team against the Lions. And they actually didn't look that bad, the Lions. I got to say, I was actually somewhat happy with what I saw. So I will say, John Gonzalez, it was a pretty decent day, even though the Lions lost the game. Okay, it was a pretty good day for the Lions and not so great for the Jets.
Yeah, you know what? Listen, we could be talking a lot more Detroit Lions football. We're not that far away because today's August 12th, and I was thinking about it as now you see it gets darker a little earlier now. Now it's about 8:30, and you kind of feel like in about a month or so from now, we're going to be talking a lot of football here. And Joey Bostrom says, I have a bad feeling about Zach Wilson. Not a good start to the preseason. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, no, definitely I'm worried about that. We're also joined here by Joe Dell, who's awaiting the arrival of his cousin, Rob Morosco, who we'll get to here in a few minutes. But I wanted to touch upon the Giants here very quickly before we get back into business, because I did want to obviously start the football conversation. Give me your impressions of the Giants here so far, Billy, in preseason.
I didn't catch too much of the game. I don't really tend to watch much of the preseason anyway.
It's hard to watch it. I got to be honest. It's hard to watch it.
I wasn't overly impressed with the Giants, even though they won. I thought Daniel Jones had, kind of an okay game. He didn't really make any huge mistakes, but, he didn't really do anything that makes you think he's turned a corner either. I'm really disappointed with, the game Darius Slayton had. He needed a big game to secure his spot in the roster. This is a guy who was seen as a potential building block a couple years ago. He has 1 catch. Overall, the offense really, I thought, struggled to do much. Even their best receiver of the game was Colin Johnson, who had that brutal fumble. One guy who did impress me, though, who I want to watch this year is the cornerback, Aaron Robinson. I know he had the 1 penalty that I thought was kind of a soft call, but he was around the ball a lot. He's someone that, if they draft him as kind of a slot corner, he's probably going to play more outside now with James Bradbury having moved on. So this year's a big opportunity for him. He was a 3rd-round pick. He was someone that I noticed a lot. I thought he looked good. Certainly I think Darnay Holmes as a slot corner is a solid player. So there were some pieces there with the Giants, but really I don't see much there. No one really, I didn't notice Evan Neal, which isn't a bad thing for an offensive lineman. You're
not supposed to notice an offensive lineman. They're not supposed to.
Kayvon Thibodeau had a quiet game, but how many snaps is he really going to be playing? I'm not worried about him yet. The first preseason game, get
Especially
out
in the
there.
first game. You're not, if anything, the
Yeah.
last game, you might get a few extra reps out of somebody, but not the first game.
Yeah,
No way.
go out there, get some plays, get your feet wet, and get out before you get hurt. Is how you handle that. So, no major injuries for the Giants. That's a plus. Other than that, I mean, look, I can't say I have high hopes in to begin with. So, whatever.
All right, well, fair points here. And John Gonzalez says Mike White is getting ready. And also says Daniel Jones will continue to be a nightmare for the Giants. A leopard doesn't change his stripes. Interesting points there. I mean, the brute force, I did want to go over to the Jets real quick because obviously, and I want to thank Anthony Finkel for posting this. And thank you, Anthony, for sharing this, by the way, in the Sports Authorities group, which you can join on Facebook at The Sports Authorities. And that is Dwayne Brown, a 5-time Pro Bowler, signs a 2-year, $22 million deal with the Jets. I mean, I guess that's going to be our replacement to Mekhi Becton. I mean, what do you make of that? Anything at all?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's not a bad fallback option for the Jets. I mean, obviously they had to address it with something, But listen, I'm not going to go crazy about the move. I'm not about to go. Right, this is going to be the big. I need to see it before I believe it. But again, it might not ultimately matter because if we don't have a quarterback, right? If we have Mike White or we have Joe Flacco, all right, it's not going to matter. Okay,
Marcus back in a trade.
Oh, God. But please. I mean, ultimately, if it helps our run game, I guess I'll be happy. But ultimately, I'm not going to go crazy about a move like this. And certainly, as a Jets fan, right, I can't think about our offensive line right now when we don't even have – we're worried about our –
I know. Listen, if we don't have a quarterback, I'm in full agreement with you. If they don't have a quarterback and Joe Flacco, we're not getting 2012 Joe Flacco. We're getting 2022 Joe Flacco. So
I mean, listen, the one thing I'll say is that from everybody I've heard, supposedly Joe Flacco's playing well in training camp. And listen, I didn't even want to hear that.
He hasn't been a starting quarterback in, 4 years?
Exactly. So I didn't want to hear that. But now, just watch. We'll hear more and more of that. And
is Drew Brees available? How about that? Is Drew Brees available? Can we convince him maybe?
I think he's getting paid more to be on NBC than he would for any team right now. So
and he's not taking any punishment either. So that's probably that would be my my backup. Can we get Drew Brees?
No. So in the end, listen, we can talk all the things we want about the Jets, but without a quarterback, it doesn't matter.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And we will get to Rob Moroska here in 2 minutes. I know he's patiently waiting, but we'll make sure we get to him shortly. And Joe Dell says Jets always need an offensive line. Yes, but if you don't have a quarterback right now, which looks like right now the Jets, we're kind of anxiously awaiting what the verdict will be. And John Gonzalez says Sauce will be a great corner. I mean, listen, the Jets have made some moves, but listen, if you don't have a quarterback in this league, it don't matter. Look at the Saints last year, right? Saints were actually really improved defensively, but didn't have a real quarterback. I mean, they didn't make the postseason. I mean, and Joe Bostrom has a funny line here. Joey's really stretching here. He goes, let's call Favre while we're at it, which, by the way, Joey Bostrom, I don't know if you know this still, or if you remember me wearing it, but I still have my Brett Favre Jets jersey.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's impressive, but I mean, I haven't worn it since 2009. I mean, I haven't worn it.
If he wants to call Favre, we might as well call Tim Tebow too. I mean, maybe that'll jersey sales for the year. I mean, we'll get something.
Well, it's Ray. What at this point? Ray Lucas, Vinny Testaverde, Chad Pennington. I mean, hey, Mark Sanchez is still out there, right? I mean, he's got to be 33, 34 at this point, and
I think.
Well, let me see. 09, yeah, 35, 36. All right, well, we'll see it. And Joe Dell says might as well call Boomer. Well, yeah, I mean, at this point, I mean, if we're gonna have an old timers Jets day, maybe. And Joey Bostrom says LOL Tebow. All right, so you know what? He's patiently waiting. I know we can come back to football, but that is Rob Moroska, obviously, longest tenured analyst. And Justin Gianelli, before I get to you, says, let's be real, Jimmy G. Yeah, I think Billy mentioned Jimmy G maybe as a potential person. Yeah, I mean, listen, we'll see. I mean, the Jets are going to have to figure something out here, that's for sure. But Mr. Moroska, obviously, good to be with you here. Mets do come up short tonight, but before that, certainly a historic run here. 15 out of 17 in your perspective on the New York Mets.
Hey guys, yeah. Oh, Joe Namath is available too. I know he's busy doing those Social Security commercials and stuff, but hey,
You
could
might
he
as
be
well
any
while they
worse?
still can afford Social Security. I mean,
Yeah, that's right. The Mets had a great run, I'll tell you. And I just want to say one thing. I've had enough with this little league 10th inning, second man on second base BS already. It's enough. This is Major League Baseball. All right. Enough with this. COVID is done in sports as far as I'm concerned. I mean, the stadiums are packed. Enough with the automatic runner on second base. It drives me crazy. This is not baseball. I don't even like the intentional walk anymore because they're, potentially they could have thrown the ball away, something, and it's happened before. No, let's just give them. That's really speeding up the game, by the way. I am sick of all this crap. It's ruining baseball. I know this is supposed to be the last year of the runner on second base, but you never know with baseball.
I mean, I'll say this, and I'll bring the guys in on a perspective about baseball. I know we spoke about this, and I'll come to the Mets in a second, but there is a point that, like, baseball games go really, really long. I mean, they go on and on and on. You look at a hockey game, right? And you go to a hockey game, and and I've said this before, it's 2.5 hours. If you go to a hockey game, if puck drops at about usually 10 after 7, you're out of, whether it's the Garden, whether it's the Coliseum, or it's UBS, you name a place, Prudential Center, you're out of there by about, at the latest, 20 to 10. Baseball, I mean, these games go on and on and on. I mean, you think there's something to that, Billy, that baseball games do go a little long? Because I know Anthony Finkel and I was speaking about this, and he goes, well, I'm only a casual baseball fan because baseball goes long. I mean, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean it goes long. It's either I said I've been to a few minor league games this year, and that pitch clock is actually really speeding up. I didn't think it was going to. That's helping. I mean, the bigger concern really is going through entire bullpens and extra inning games. So I get it. I mean, I wouldn't start in the 10th inning, but you get to the 12th inning. You want to avoid those 20 inning marathons where you're sending your entire bullpen down to the minors the next day to bring up guys who have live arms. So, I wouldn't do it in the 10th inning, but you get 12th inning, 13th inning. Yeah, at that point, put the guy on, get it expedited. I'm fine with that. But yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of it either. But I understand the point of it. I understand, guys, the way bullpens are used now, you can't have these 20 inning games.
No.
And, it's going to create injuries, so you have to be mindful of that too.
I think that it is overdue, and Joey Bosham says the Ghost Runner needs to go.
I don't agree with any of that. I don't agree with any of that. I'm telling you why. That's not baseball. They're real. I don't care. You know what? Let's go back to 1999 in the playoffs. Okay, the Mets against the Braves. Okay, that what you were sitting. I was at that game. It was pouring rain, extra innings. You were sitting.
Right, that was the Sunday 4:00 game, and we speaking about.
Yeah, and I didn't get home till 11 o'clock that night.
Yep. In fact, the game, if I remember it well, I actually went to I went to take a shower during the in between innings, and I actually ran out of the shower, and the Mets found a way to win the game.
The grand slam single.
Yep.
But the point I'm trying to make is that's not baseball. Okay, let's go with the pitch clock. That's cool. All right, that I don't mind. That'll speed things up. But let's not. They're just changing the game too much. And the casual fan, whatever. Look at Citi Field, packed tonight. When the teams are winning, they're gonna be packed. I don't care if the game takes 3.5 hours or whatever. If the team's good, the stadium's gonna be packed and people are gonna go wild. So I mean, it's just Bush League, Little League BS with a runner starting on second. And I don't care what inning it is because that's not what baseball is. What are we going to start? What in 10 years they're going to decide, well, let's have ties in baseball now, because the games are going too long. So let's have ties and we'll put another column in the win-loss column and have ties. No, that's not baseball. And they're ruining the game.
All right, so obviously I'll get to the Yankees in a second, but I want to get to Bruce Force Brad Weiss because obviously the Bruce Force has been a coach, he's been a player, and obviously his father for those that may or may not know, actually was a professional baseball, very, very, very successful player. I think has just a little bit of an edge as a more successful athlete than the brute force, and the brute force would actually probably agree with me on that. So we're certainly actually saying truth here. But I mean, do you feel the same way, the brute force? I mean, you're a guy that's played, you've been an athlete. I mean, do you like these automatic runner to second and these different things that go on? I mean, what do you make of all that as somebody who was a most recent competitive athlete?
Yeah, well, I've often been said to be a old man's soul in a young man's body. A lot of people will tell me that because that's the way I kind of act and that's the way I kind of go. And I couldn't agree more with Rob Morosco on this. I mean, listen to me carefully. When I go to a Mets game, okay, I understand that it's going to be a long game. It's baseball. If you're going to a game, you have to kind of understand that you're going and it's going to be a long game. That's part of the experience. That's part of the game, okay? It takes time, all right? And you know, listen, I'm actually have a little different view on this pitch clock. What are you going to tell pitchers to speed up? You're going to tell them that you're going to get batters in the batter's box quicker. They're not going to get to take their time. I yell at my players all my time in basketball to take their damn time, and they don't listen to me. But you know, I try. You know, but ultimately, I'm not the type of guy that wants to see the game get ruined, the game get sped up, and all of a sudden become a circus. When it's the game is meant to be all right. Take your time, right? Make the next pitch. Right?
I always remember take your time in basketball of somebody you competed against, Doug Levy. I never forget. Take your time, Doug. Take your time. So yeah, I mean,
they preached that to me for years about how to score. Take your time. And the thing is that the other thing I want to say is this: you're going to tell pitchers to move faster, right, and keep throwing faster. That's going to lead to more injuries because they're going to have to keep throwing and keep throwing and keep throwing, right? Instead of composure, next pitch, right? Trust me, it's not going to be good. And for me as a fan, right, I'm a fan that obviously, wants to stay from the beginning of the game to the end of the game. I'm agreeing with Rob Morosco. Like, these fun games, you want to see the game play out. You don't want to see no damn fake ghost runner on second base, and then basically it's an automatic run, almost every inning. And I mean, I get the whole thing behind it with the COVID, but now, right, it's just ridiculous, right? Let the game play out. Let there be, someone's got to get a hit, and then someone else has to get a hit to score a run. Someone's got to hit a home run, right? Not, all right, I got to hit a single, right? 3 times I get a single, and then, a run scores automatically. I just hate that. I like the game traditionally the way it is, and I've said this many, many occasions already. Rob Manfred is a disgrace to baseball because he has completely ruined it with everything that he's done, and he's just trying to do more and more, and everything he's done has been a disaster. Between him and James Dolan, those are some of the 2 worst people in sports history, Rob Manfred and James Dolan.
But I will say, though, continue to say, at least with James Dolan, the Rangers have had some postseason success. So Rob Manfred, I mean, there's almost no success with anything he does. I'll still continue to say that. With the hockey side, the Rangers have been competitive at times. And I also want to give a shout-out to Joanne Sinar. Of course, her daughter is Shelby Sinar, who, by the way, Mrs. Sinar, what are you doing? It's like 3:44 a.m. You really get up early. And, of course, Shelby we had on, she was, of course, the first ever UKW women's champion. Of course, she does the play-by-play for UKW there in the UK. So shout-out to Shelby Sinar. And Justin Gianelli says Rob Manfred. That's a good one, Rob Manfred. I think I haven't heard that one, Rob Manfred. So that's a good one here. And Justin also says the Yankees lose, and with the dirty water hashtag. And Jodell also says extra innings is one of the most exciting perks of baseball. I definitely agree.
It is a perk.
Okay.
You go to a game and get to see more innings. I mean, it is a perk, right? You pay to go to the 9-inning game.
But let me just say this. And I do agree with you. I do agree. I always like overtime, extra innings, whatever else. But is it a perk, though, if the game goes like 5 hours plus? Is that a perk when you have to go to work?
I mean,
go to school?
Last time I checked, Tom Bryce, you could leave whenever you'd like. So, I mean, if you are a diehard baseball fan, right, you're staying there until 12:30 at night watching a 15-inning game. If you're not, you can go home, Gary Keegan Runner on your TV, and you can sit in bed and watch the game. All right, that's how I feel about it. Okay.
But if I'm traveling home, I have to drive an hour and a half. I mean, I don't have that luxury if the game goes till 11 o'clock, 11:30, and then I have to make the judgment call to leave.
So leave.
NBA games don't go that long.
But that's the NBA. It's a different sport. Baseball, this is the way baseball is played. The way baseball is played is slow, right? A lot of strategy, a lot of methodical.
I do feel like that, but I got to be honest. And listen, I love baseball, but I do feel like that baseball is a very, very slow game compared to the other three.
But the thing is that the one thing I want to make sure I'm clear on is that there are ways to speed the game up, right? There are ways that you can, right? Do we need as many commercials during the break? Do we need, right, as many delays in the game when it comes to reviews and taking too long and all these things?
Baseball reviews do go on really long.
I was at the game on Sunday. They had a review at the beginning of the game, right, in the first inning, and it took basically 20 damn minutes.
And wasn't there a review on Saturday also where it took like forever as well? I'm pretty sure there was.
So there's different ways, right, to get it right. And Rob Manfred has simply got it wrong. It's just over and over again getting it wrong, right? There's ways to get it right, and he's failed miserably.
All right, so certainly fair points here. And John Gonzalez says, I'm not a big fan of the DH either. Justin Gianelli says, Joseph Tsai too. But Joseph Tsai.
Listen to me, Justin Gianelli. There's a team that Joe Tsai also owns. I'm going to get to later because it was a big-time win tonight, all right? And I think I'm going to have to see him. So I'm not – Joe Tsai, I get it. You're upset with the Nets. Okay, we will get to them towards the end because there's some news with them. But I will say, all right, no, he's not Rob Manfred or James Dolan. That is a different stratosphere.
And let me get to a few other comments. John Gonzalez says, I'm old school like Brute. Leave the game alone and shove the analytics. Justin Gianelli says, me either, but I've gotten used to it. Joe Dell has a comment that I really can't put on the air because I'm going to definitely plead the fifth, and we're a PG show. So if you're on Facebook, you can look at the comment, but Joe, I apologize. I can't post that comment because I just can't. I can't read the comment. I can't post it because we are a family show and we have many people out there that like Sportzwire. But let me go back to something. I'll come back to the Mets and I'll certainly talk about the Yankees. But I got to ask you guys, did you guys watch Field of Dreams yesterday? I'll go with Billy first, then we'll go around the room. You guys watch Field of Dreams at all?
I watched a little bit of it, like the pregame show. The actual game, Cubs Reds, I'm not interested in watching.
So you didn't like the whole setup, and you didn't.
I know the whole setup was cool and everything. It's just like they're not good teams. It's not a good game to watch. Neither team.
Well, Yankees White Sox was a good matchup last year.
Yeah, the specialty game. It's like the NFL doing like Jaguars Jets in London. Like they have these like specialty games. Like put good teams in them. Don't put like garbage. And this is where, like, the MLB, they can't market themselves. You have the Angels, you have Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani on that team, and they're on national TV, like, twice a damn year. Then, you get the Field of Dreams game, this big game the MLB builds up for a month, and it's, two teams on pace to lose, 90 games, 100 games?
Yeah, about 90, 93, 94 games.
I know they're, like, old rivals, but there's a lot of rivalries with teams that are good. You could have done...
How about Cardinals-Dodgers? I think that would have been a great matchup.
You could have done Cardinals-Mets. You could have done Mets-Braves. You could have done... you could have done any matchup that had, two teams. You could have done Dodgers Brewers and had it be like the battle for the NL Central. You go.
How about Red Sox and Orioles even?
History
there. That would have been a fine matchup.
You go with these two teams. I get they're historical teams and they've been around forever, but neither of them have really had long periods of sustained success. And right now they're both terrible. Why were they in this game?
Yeah, no question about it. And for you, Mr. Moroska, Field of Dreams here, because I got some comments on that, and I'm glad I brought it up. Did you watch it? What'd you make of it?
I watched the pregame show, and then I watched up to about the fifth inning or sixth inning, and then I couldn't take it anymore. First of all, Cincinnati, we just watched the Mets
annihilate them.
Although
the Reds are actually playing a lot better since they're really, really awful. So I remember speaking about them on the air, where they're like 10-30 or something like that, 10-35, and they've played better since then.
Yeah, but the Mets killed them, and then the next day you got Cincinnati playing the Cubs. All right, the Cubs weren't supposed to be as bad as they are this year, so maybe that was a key. But the pregame stuff I liked. I like seeing Johnny bench. I like seeing the Griffeys walk out of the.
Yeah, that was a cool thing. And the fact that you got to give those guys both credit to the fact that Griffey makes the major leagues at a young age, and his father hung around long enough that they could make that happen. That's a pretty cool thing. I was thinking about that this morning, and wow, you think about it, his father hangs on long enough, and then he becomes a teammate of his, and then he's getting traded actually the year that the Cincinnati Reds could have won the World Series. I mean, that's a really, really cool feat there, and he wanted to play with his son rather. I mean, so you got to look at it that from that standpoint. But I thought that was a cool thing.
Yeah, it definitely was. And, all the pregame stuff was good. It's a good thing to have. But, I agree with the guys. There should be better teams playing, even, Dodgers Giants or Dodgers.
I would have went Cardinals Dodgers. I would have went, listen,
there's so many.
Cardinals, yep.
But, so the game itself was pretty boring. I didn't make it past the 5th inning. But, I hung in there for a while. And, I got to give John Smoltz credit also because his father passed away yesterday morning, and then he did the game. I mean, that's and they're all talking about fathers and stuff, and people are getting choked up. So I thought that that was pretty amazing that he did that game after his father passed away that morning. So I got to give it some credit to him.
Absolutely, no question about that. Before I get to the brute force, let me get to a few comments. Justin Gianelli says, keep it PG. Yes, that's what we try to do on Sportswire Radio. John Gonzalez seems to concur. Justin Gianelli says, I actually watched the game and enjoyed it. John Gonzalez says, I enjoyed the Field of Dreams game. The setting itself was the big deal. Yeah, I thought the setting, that's really, to me, was what it was worth. And Joey Bostrom says, I watched, but it wasn't the same as last year because you had 2 really good teams last year. You can't have a game like that, then have one of the 2 worst teams in baseball. John Gonzalez has a great one for you, the Brute Force. Just for you before we ask you on the Field of Dreams. Field of Dreams is like the Lions on Thanksgiving. You watch it no matter what. Well, this year might be different, though, with the Lions, I would say. This year might be different. But the Brute Force, did you care? I mean, Field of Dreams, was it a big deal? Was it not a big deal? What'd you think?
No, big deal. What are you, serious? I mean, first of all, what I will say is this. You want me to, pat Rob Manfred on the back a little bit? This has been a good idea. I do think that the Field of Dreams idea is a good idea. But the guys mentioned, I'm going to go even further, okay? Yesterday was Thursday, okay? It's Thursday, okay? And you got this game as the Field of Dreams game. You couldn't pick a better day?
I thought the same thing. I knew you were going with that.
You couldn't get it on a weekend. Couldn't get it on a Friday.
Saturday night. And Fox, who's the national carrier for games, why wouldn't they carry it Saturday? Because there's no competition right now. There's no college football. No. There's no NFL. Baseball owns August. That's a good point.
You couldn't put it on the Sunday. I mean, you put the Little League game on Sunday where you have them play at the Little League, right? You put that game there, so why can't it be on a weekend, right? Because me, as someone who's busy, right? And watching my own team, obviously, okay, is not going to watch that game over my team because it's a weekday, right, and I don't have time to be watching it. Put it in a primetime spot where everybody can watch the game, right, like a Sunday night baseball game or something like that. You instead put it on a Thursday, right, then you put 2 trash teams in it. And now what I'm going to say about that is this, okay, I know you can't change it because in the end you got to give as many teams a chance to be in that game, right? But ultimately, I mean, as the beginning of the season starts and these teams both show you that they stink, why can't you flex 2 new teams into there? And I know everybody's going to say, well, it comes down to the fans. The fans paid the tickets already. They already made the arrangements. I get it, okay? So in the end, it's on baseball to put a better product in that game because you can't put that product in a game. And then on top of that, you can't put it on a Thursday where nobody really – can care enough because the game stinks.
And then you put it 7, and then also you put it 7:00 Thursday. So if I'm coming home from work, I'm not going to sit there and turn Fox on. On Thursday and a nice day in August. I'm going to be at the beach. I'm going to be at with my family somewhere if I'm taking a vacation. So I mean, I think Saturday night would have been the best spot.
Put it at a time that people would want to actually watch the game, right? Put it at an actual good time because that is not a good time. Right? Between all the different things that were going on, that was not a good time, right? And baseball, once again, can't get it right. I mean, they simply cannot get it right. And they failed again. Because ultimately, just like we all said, I mean, I didn't even watch it at all, but for people that did watch it, you didn't watch it for long, that's for sure.
No, and I think here, John Gonzalez agrees that it should have been on Saturday. Justin Gianelli, though, says Friday was a no because of travel. Saturday, Sunday, Great American Ball. But I really don't think.
Right, but to Justin's point, why couldn't they play the games at All-American on Thursday Friday.
That was exactly what I was going to say. That, to me, could have been easily adjusted. This is August. There's nothing else going on. Fox is the national deals with Major League Baseball. If they own the rights to the game, they could have definitely, if they wanted to, have adjusted it to play Saturday. I do think Saturday night would have been the best spot, but that's why, listen, they're not even having a Field of Dreams game next year for all this hype. Oh, we're going to do this Field of Dreams thing, and now you're not doing it consistently here. And John Gonzalez has a great law. Yeah, go ahead, Billy, jump in.
The other thing I'm wondering, it's a cool concept, right? Does it have to be at the same stadium every year? I mean, we can't do one at Hinchcliffe Stadium, the old Negro League Stadium.
Yep.
We can't do them at other
Williamsport, right?
That where move these neutral site games around. It doesn't have to be a specific once a location. You can do these games. The NHL, I know it's a little bit different building an NHL arena versus a MLB ballpark, but you can put together a temporary ballpark for a game at the NHL play games at Lake Tahoe. You can do something similar like that.
Well, the NHL, I think, has done a good job when it comes to the Winter Classic, and they've done these Stadium Series games. And I think the NHL has done good with that. They've done a good job in kind of working everybody in there.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be just Field of Dreams in this random cornfield in Iowa. I get it was like a great movie, but we can expand on this idea. We can do, you can do games at, Olympic Stadium. That's what we used to play. You can expand on this idea and make it new instead of trotting out, the same.
I actually have a couple of better ideas. We know somebody that supported us here on Sportswire Radio, a guy, Joe Tyrone, and he used to raise money for what was called the Travis Roy Foundation. What they would do is they would play in a field in Vermont, kind of like a carbon copy of Field of Dreams, but obviously not with the cornfields and all that stuff. And it's almost like a little Fenway Park. That would have been kind of a fun spot. In Vermont, somewhere where nobody really goes to, it's kind of an off-the-beat spot, and that would have been a really interesting spot. So I thought that would have been a place that would have been a good idea. And Justin Gianelli says site construction will be back in 2024, but I don't think after what we've heard from some of the guys, it's a mixed bag here. But speaking of things here, very quick, I did want to give a shout-out to the Massapequa, excuse me, my tongue is tied, the Massapequa Coast Little League team here in New York, because now they are going to reach the Little League World Series, as they have now won here is Joey Leonetti through a no-hitter, and they have clinched their berth into the Metro Regional Championship that they had won. So they'll be a part of the Little League World Series for the first time ever. Massapequa Coast will be a part of it with a 4-0 victory over Toms River. Of course, Toms River is, we've been in it before, and a guy I know very well, Todd Frazier, the Todd father, because I'm actually friends with his cousin. So Connor Keenan, obviously in the military, I want to give Connor a big shout out. But Toms River's obviously been here a bunch of times in the past. But Massapequa Coast is here for the first time. So congratulations to them. They will be a part of the Little League World Series and earning their spot as the Metro Region representative. So great shout about that. I mean, the Brew Force, are you going now to the Little League World Series? Because Massapequa, I know it's a little bit of a ways from you, but any inclinings if you're going to go there or not?
Well, first of all, no, it's not. I mean, it's not that far at all, and we've been there, Tom Bryce, because
I was going to say because
the Little League fields are right down the street. And Massapequa, I mean, talk about programs in baseball that are elite. I mean, Massapequa's always been good at baseball from young to older. I mean, their high school team's one of the best on Long Island as well. So they, this is a pretty cool thing, though, that they're going to go to the World Series. I will say, though, when it comes to Massapequa, I kind of get nightmares because I had some of my worst games as a player, in basketball against Massapequa High School, and then in baseball they always gave us trouble. So it does give me nightmares talking about Massapequa, but at the same time, all right, I'm happy for them. This is great for Long Island too to have a team representing as the New York region team. But ultimately, we'll see. Maybe I'll make an appearance, but. Massapequa, certainly, if they're listening, because there's some here on Long Island that know me, that maybe have mutual connections there, give them a shout out. Massapequa, terrific job. Congratulations. And I hope you guys do well in the Little League World Series.
And first time Long Island has a representative in the Little League World Series since 1978. I would have thought with all the baseball talent, all the sports stars in baseball that have come out of Long Island.
That's a long time. Wow.
I would have thought it would have been sooner. And I obviously remember it was several years back when Staten Island had a team from the South Shore Little League that was a part of the Little League World Series.
That's almost as long as the Knicks since they won their last championship. It's basically the same thing. That's crazy.
Who would have guessed that? Listen, with Long Island, I definitely would have thought that Long Island, and now I'm thinking about it, watching the Little League World Series, at least the last 20, 25 years. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, we haven't had a team from Long Island, and John Gonzalez says, I have been to Williamsburg there's Williamsport. I think it's Williamsport he means, at Williamsburg, because Williamsburg's in Brooklyn. And I don't think that Williamsburg has any room for a Little League World Series of any sorts. And I don't think I would want to even go to Williamsburg for any real reasons at this point. So, but I think he means to say, I've been to Williamsport for the Little League World Series. It's very impressive. Yeah, I would think that would be great for Major League Baseball. I think we did something a few years back. Reds and Pirates was in Williamsport, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, the last few years they've done games in Williamsport. That's been very successful. And like I said, in my point, that was on a weekend. That was on a Sunday.
Well, that was Sunday Night Baseball. That was in 19, I think, or 2018?
Yeah, they've done it a few times now. Yeah. I forgot the other matchups. I believe the Mets were in it one year, too.
Yes.
Year,
yeah.
Cubs,
was it Mets Phillies? Was it Mets?
I think.
Yeah. Mets Phillies.
I would be more cool with that because I feel like Williamsport. I've always liked the park there, and John Gonzalez. I agree with you. In fact, it's a very impressive field, and I always would have thought that would have been a much more better setup. But be that as it may, and obviously coming back to the Yankees here, Yankees get another loss here, and certainly Yankees are definitely limping here to the finish line. I wanted to ask you, Mr. Maraska, before we go back to the Mets here for a little while. I mean, Yankees, you worried about? I mean, the Brute Force had brought up somebody that we've spoke about as a target here on Sportswire Radio for quite a bit, and that is, of course, Aaron Boone. And I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm definitely worried about this team. And I also think that this continues. I mean, I don't think he'll be fired, but the Aaron Boone, Boo Birds, and everybody else that has been unhappy with him, I think they're going to be coming out here loud and clear real soon if this doesn't change.
All I have to say is if the Yankees do not make it far into the playoffs in October, he's got to go. I mean, first of all, George would have got rid of him before this, definitely. I mean, it's going on too long, and there's no way he should last. If they collapse after the amazing start that they had.
What were they, like 60-22 at one point or something like that, or 62-24? And
yeah, something like that. Yep.
Yeah, and I mean after that historical start, and if they blow it, I think he's got to go. They got to do something because first of all the fans are going to go nuts, and it's just they'll have to.
I'm getting the feel that the Yankees. I mean, I think they'll definitely make the playoffs, but like I get the feel that they're going to wind up only winning like 90 some odd games here. I mean, I know the schedule gets a little better, but I mean, I'm just not impressed with this team at all. I mean, Billy, is there something to that? I mean, if this continues, I mean, obviously they won't make the move now, but if the Yankees do, let's say, get bounced again early in the postseason, is Boone in trouble?
Yeah, I mean, he might be, and I don't think he's a great manager. I don't know how much is his fault. I don't think they've put together as complete a roster as they could have, but certainly they're not going to blow it up. Even if they lose Judge, they're not going to rebuild. And yeah, I don't think Boone's been set up for success, but I don't think he's just done anything to elevate the team either. They remind me a little bit of the Mets under like Louis Rojas and even Mickey Callaway, where like the pieces were kind of there. You felt like the team should have ultimately been better than they actually were. That's sort of what this Yankees team is feeling like to me a little bit. So
yeah, that's a good point because I mean the 2019 team with Callaway really wasn't bad. Won 86 games. Obviously could have made the postseason, didn't. And even last year with Louis Rojas, who were in first place, I think for like 96 days, wound up collapsing. Those teams weren't really horrible. So I mean they didn't have the success we would have liked, but they weren't bad baseball teams. And I got this stat here from the crack staff, and this kind of puts into perspective the kind of season before I get to the Brute Force at the Mets and Yankees have had. Do you know this is only the second time that the Yankees and Mets have lost on a Friday night? I mean, both of them at the same time. And we're talking about here like hasn't happened much that the Mets and Yankees have both lost on their second straight Friday. It's the only two Fridays the entire season this has happened. So think about that, right? The Mets were always like, oh, woe is me, Mets, no confidence, whatever, right? And the Yankees, I mean, they're always the Yankees, but this is only now the second time, and it's been the last two Fridays that both teams have lost on a Friday night. I mean, that just puts in perspective the kind of season here. I mean, the Brute Force, I mean, I know we spoke about it again, but I think now I'm convinced a little bit right now with this Yankees team before I get to some comments that with them sputtering, I do think that Boone is definitely vulnerable if the Yankees get into the postseason and get bounced early. I really think you cannot tolerate this.
Yeah, and Tom, it's funny how things work because you circled back to this question at a perfect time because I actually just received a message from a Yankee fan. His name is Tim O'Brien. We'll give him a shout out. Nice guy, Tim O'Brien. This is his question right now. He's asking me a question. He wants me to address it.
Good.
He said, I got a question. Do you think Aaron Boone should be fired after tonight? He said, how many times do you bring in struggling Holmes and he loses you the game? 5 out of the last 10, he's done so. So I'm going to be honest with you because I think the Boo Birds, as Tim O'Brien, who really has disrespected Aaron Boone in years past and has said to Rob Moroska's point that he should be long gone. But this year, he was very quiet about Aaron Boone until now. Because now the Yankees are showing their vulnerabilities. They're showing their problems. They're showing that some of the things that went well early in the season are no longer going well. Like we were all hyping them up about their starting pitching. And now it's like the same old Yankees with the starting pitching from years past, where that's been kind of the concern. The issue is, the one thing we always talk about with the Yankees is their bullpen is always good. That has not been the case. And the lineup always gets it done. And that has not been the case. Because besides the top guys, as we talked about in the show, they're not getting it done. And it's miserable right now. I mean, for the Yankees to score 2 runs again tonight against the Red Sox.
This is not even a good Red Sox team right now.
No, they're struggling. They're struggling. I mean, I understand from the Mets' perspective. I mean, the Phillies were actually playing well going into this game. And you got to give, a guy credit. Suarez, who pitched well tonight. But ultimately, the Yankees, of all teams, go into a struggling Red Sox team. And I think that really shows you how much the Yankees are struggling. That even against a team that's struggling, they're still not playing good baseball.
Well, Seattle couldn't score any runs. I know Seattle's played better, but, all these series,
right.
Yankees
so in the end, to respond to Tim O'Brien's comment, the seat is getting warmer, and it's going to continue to get warmer. And like Rob said, we're going to talk as much as we want on these Yankees right now, but no one cares. They're still going to make the playoffs. They're still going to get one of the top seeds. But if the Yankees falter in the playoffs, especially before they get to the Houston Astros, because we all know it's what we think is going to happen. If they lose before they get to the Astros, he should be gone. He should have already been gone, but he really should be gone, right? And it's crazy, too, that Billy McInerney brings up how this is kind of like a Luis Rojas run team when Luis Rojas is actually one of the coaches. So in the end, the Yankees right now are in a big-time mess. Like we said earlier, the fact that the Mets have the better record is obviously impressive for the Mets, but it's really, considering the start that the Yankees had, devastating for the Yankees.
We're talking about now a Yankees team. I don't even know if they're going to win 100 games, and I got a bunch of comments in here, and John Gonzalez says fast forward to October, Mets first half. So Mets still got their work cut out. We'll see about that. Justin Gianelli says he's in the first of a new 4-year deal. He won't be going. But you know what? Managers, I don't think that means jack. This is not the same as a big money contract. If the fan base don't like him and they struggle, we'll see. But John Gonzalez has a good point here. Replace him with whom? Carlos Beltran? I don't know. That might be.
I guess you gotta wonder who the replacement is, but
that's why maybe they still stick with him. To Justin's point, maybe they.
But at the same time, Tom Bryce, they said the same thing when Luis Rojas was let go by the Mets. Who are they hiring? Buck Showalter. That's what they said. They actually, and people were like, "No, Buck Showalter. He's old."
Yeah, but right. But I think.
And look at Buck Showalter. He's manager of the year. Like the Yankees can still find somebody to help them be better than what they are.
Yeah, but who? But again, there is a difference into who is out there. Bruce Bochy ain't coming here. Ron Washington, I guess. If you really were hypothetically, even though I don't necessarily know if they're going to really make the move, but the market's a little thinner, I think, than it was last year. And Justin Gianelli says the Yankees are financially conscious now. You'd have to pay Boone for 3 more years along with the new manager. Yeah, but you know what, though? The fan base, he's definitely going to be on a leash. There's no question that maybe he survives this year, but next year it's still going to linger. The fan base is not going to be happy. And Justin also points out the Mets have lost 4 straight games in the black jersey. You know what that means, Justin? They shouldn't be wearing the black jerseys no more. Take them off. We don't need the black jerseys.
Tom, I have a question.
Good.
And I like everything that Brute Force said. I agree with all of that, definitely. But would Yankee fans ever want to see Don Mattingly as their manager? What do you think?
That's a legitimate candidate.
I'm sorry, what, Brute?
No, I was going to say that's a legitimate candidate because the Marlins right now are sputtering too. So
Yeah, but why would the Marlins get rid of him, though? He's done his best there keeping them competitive.
But there's been talk that, there has been some talk that he, they may get rid of him. So.
And to your point, Tom, it's easy. As soon as a team shows, and we don't know what the Marlins are thinking. Derek Jeter's not there anymore, so it's not like he has him there. So we don't know what the Marlins are thinking. They could easily just dump Don Mattingly. And to Rob Moroska's point, that could be a good candidate for the Yankees.
You agree with that, Billy? I mean, Don Mattingly to the Yankees as a manager, I kind of feel like that. I still am under the impression that the Marlins would still keep him. Got him to the postseason a couple years ago. They're a young team. They're building. They're competitive. I mean, not really his fault.
Yeah, I mean, fans would eat it up if he went back, but
Sure.
I agree with you. I don't think he's leaving the Marlins. I think that they realize that the issue is not with Mattingly. I think the issue is with their team. So I know it's important they need to see results, but I don't think they're going to let him go. Especially, look, Derek Jeter just left the franchise. I'm sure they kind of want to avoid the appearance that there's a funnel system to the Yankees. So I think the Marlins are not going to let Don Mattingly leave. I think he's well liked in the clubhouse. I think the ownership likes him. I think he's there for at least another couple of years.
Yeah, I don't think he's done a bad job there. I think, look, I mean, it's a tough circumstance to be a manager, and for that franchise, because that franchise historically.
And they having a good player. They trade him away. It's
right. I mean, that's a franchise that historically has just never spent money, and they built a ballpark. And unfortunately, I was watching some of the Braves and Marlins game, and there's like nobody in that park. It's just
Well, the last thing I'll add to that, Tom Bryce, is, I mean, again, you never know what the front office is thinking and how they're going about it. I mean, just up the road in Miami, we had the Brian Flores situation. No one ever thought he was going to get fired. I mean,
I didn't see that when we spoke about it. I did not see that. Nope. You're right.
No one saw that. He had success. It wasn't really his fault. Obviously, for different reasons, they're in two different situations. But who knows? My point is, who knows? I mean, Don Mattingly could be. I mean, it's been a lot of years. How many years has he been there now? It's been a long time.
What, 7? Is this 7 years? I think he's there. 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a long time for a current MLB manager. So, again, I could see it happening. I mean, the Marlins right now are not playing great, so I could see that happening potentially.
And listen, I mean, if there is one manager that somebody might want to take it for the Yankees, because I highly doubt he'll be back regardless of how they finish, Tony La Russa might be available after this season.
Oh, Lord.
And John Gonzalez here. Let me get to John Gonzalez. He says, absolutely, the Yankee fans would want Mattingly. Mattingly is a god in the Bronx. So there's no question that, listen, Mattingly is probably I would have to say he's the most beloved Yankee to never win a championship. I think that's pretty fair to say. He's probably up there. He's one of the most beloved Yankees to never win a champion, which is saying a lot. And thanks to the crack staff, Mattingly is in year 7 as Marlins manager. He's been there a long time. So I guess there is a point that 7 years he's been there, and they've only had the one postseason. But obviously, it's a franchise that has had very, very limited success because they just don't spend any money or have the money here. So those are some of the things here that we're speaking about on Sportswire Radio. All right, so let's jump in for me.
Yet they still won 2 World Series,
They've won 2 more in my lifetime than as a Mets fan, right?
See,
I mean, they won
there you go.
97 and 2003, right? I mean, they won the 2 World Series. I mean, that just goes to show you. A franchise wins 2 World Series in their existence, in the Mets, in my existence, and probably Billy and the Brute Forces, I can safely say, have no World Series. So, I mean, that just shows you the there. And Mattingly's record as Marlins manager is 423 and 553. So, I mean, that's about what I would have thought. He's got 79, 82, 77 and 85, 63 and 98, 57, 105, 31 and 29, 2000. Short, and you get to the postseason. Last year, 67 wins. This year, going into action, 49-59. So you figure they'll probably win 72, 73 games based off the law of logic. So, those are some things here. But let's come back to the Mets because Mr. Maraska, obviously here, going into the Mets, the brute force, I know, wants to talk a lot about it. And obviously, Jacob deGrom, a lot of electricity here. Mets lose tonight, but certainly quite a run here. And, what do you think this team goes from here now? And talk about some of the things that have fueled this important surge here before tonight's outcome.
The small moves that they made for the trade deadline have so far turned out to be pretty good moves.
Tyler Naquin, Daniel Vogelbach, yep.
Vogelbach is like all of a sudden he's like a new Mets hero, and the guy is fun to watch. It's fun to watch him at bat. It's fun to watch him run those bases. Let me tell you, it's like a train going around the bases.
He reminds me of a wrestler I interviewed last week where he was coming up. They called him Big Train. He was going in like this, and that's Daniel Vogelbach, literally going like this.
He makes the pitcher throw pitches. He ups the pitch count. That's great. These Mets batters have done that all year.
He's hitting 341 going into tonight's game, Vogelbach. Impressive.
We weren't too sure about him, when they made the trade, but right now there's nothing to complain about. It's been fun watching the guy play baseball, and all these guys are happy to be on the Mets now, coming from losing teams, being in a pennant race, and you could see just by the way they're playing that they're enjoying themselves, and the fans are enjoying watching them play. So it's been a pretty fun couple of weeks. But the Mets, they can't let the Phillies get in their heads now. Tonight could have gone either way. Marte gets thrown out at the plate. That shouldn't have happened. We got the extra inning, that I was complaining about with the runner on second. Yep. So tonight's game, Scherzer pitched a great game again, and it was a wasted game.
Another start where he pitches well and doesn't get the run support.
Yeah, and that's so familiar with the Mets, but this is a different Mets team. That series against Cincinnati was great. They just beat up on them, and it was a lot of fun to watch. The Braves series, another one, a lot of fun to watch. So it's a different team. The manager, listen, that clubhouse is great right now. They're enjoying themselves. They're playing good baseball. You're not going to win every night. They lost tonight, and they
won 15 out of 17 before this.
That's
and
right.
I was trying to think about it before I get to Billy and the brute force and some other comments. But when was the last time the Mets won 15 out of 17? You got to go way back in the record books. The Mets 15 out of 17. We don't do that often.
Yeah, and the Mets, whenever a team scores a run in the first inning, the Mets have been answering it back right away. They score. Someone scores a run against them in the first. The Mets score a run back, pretty fast. So it's fun to watch this team right now.
Oh, absolutely, no question about it. Let me get to some comments before I get to Billy and the brute force. And also here, Justin says, Mattingly did well with the Dodgers, but the Dodgers became a wagon when the new owners. Yeah, he did do a good job. They got them to the postseason several times. I agree with you on that. John Gonzalez says maybe the Yankees bring back Jack McKeon. He's only 85. Well, Russa can't be far behind. Dusty Baker's got to be, 75 maybe at this point, 74? And Joe Dell says Vogelbach is a future. He's one of those guys that, probably is not going to be a Hall of Famer, but he's going to be in Met history. If this team goes deep into the postseason and has a run, you're going to remember Daniel Vogelbach. And Justin says, I legit saw 4 to 5 Vogelbach jerseys at Citi Field. So that tells you that he is definitely a quick folk figure here and cult hero in Mets history. And John Gonzalez also says, Vogelbach is big, sexy parts. Yeah, I did hear that on the radio. I heard that there was one comparison. But, Billy, is it what's fueling the Mets? Because you think about Darren Ruff, you think about Tyler Naquin, you think about Daniel Vogelbach, and these guys, they come through and get hits. But I also think Francisco Lindor, after all the knocking that Met fans have had, and obviously I see the brute force, we'll get to him in a second, but Lindor legitimately now I think has become the second best Mets offensive player, and legitimately the player finally I think we were expecting to get when we got him from Cleveland a couple years ago.
Yeah, no, I think the new players have helped, but no, I don't think they've been the driving force behind this run. I think it's two things. I think one, they were just due for a run.
Right.
They didn't really have any streaks in the beginning of the year, and then
Nope.
We talked about earlier DeGrom coming back and Scherzer coming back, and I think just I think that ultimately the lineup, Alon's been driving the runs all year. Lindor, like you said, has been great. McNeil has been back to himself, and McNeil's gotten hot lately, which helped a lot.
Yep.
I'm going to say McNeil getting hot has been more impactful than any of the players that were brought in via trades. Because when he's hitting, the lineup moves so much better. Don't get me wrong. I think Vogelback's help. I think Ruff's help. I think Naquin was a great addition, but I don't think any of them have been as impactful as just the health of the rotation and having the continued excellence of your top horses, of your Lindor, your Alonso McNeil kind of players.
And I know that the brute force Bradley Weiss, I see it on the screen. I see it on the computer. I already know what he's going to say. But, looking at this Mets team, I'm still going to ask you the question anyway. And you look at a team like this, and they're winning with these guys that almost, again, kind of reminds me of 2015 where you saw, was it Juan Uribe and Kelly Johnson, where these guys just all of a sudden always got hits, and all of a sudden it was like the flick of a switch. They come to the Mets, and all of a sudden they become stars. Cespedes as well rounds it out and fuels the drink, and Daniel Murphy gets hot in the second half of the season that year, and I kind of see some of the similarities with the lineup a little bit. But, the brute force, is it that simple as these guys like Daniel Vogelback, Darren Ruff, and Tyler Naquin who come from teams that are meh, and then they come in here and they fuel it? Talk to me about some of those keys here for this Mets team.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be honest with you guys. You talk about what's fueling the New York Mets, and I'm going to be honest with you, Tom Bryce. I think it's me, and I think it's you who's fueling the New York Mets, because when they listen to people like you come on the show and say, we should only win 2 out of 5 is okay, and then they hear me, and they say, let's put them in the dump. Let's show them who's boss. Let's show them who the better team is. Okay? And ultimately, putting that together, the New York Mets are a motivated and confident team overall. And listen, you just mentioned the guy who I really wanted to highlight today, and that's Francisco Lindor. This guy does not get enough credit for the season that he's had. And considering too, he's bumped his average 30 points over the last month. He's batting .270. Okay, he has 20 home runs. He has 81 RBIs. This guy
We're in history books for that position. 81 RBIs. We're now going to be
having an amazing season, and he's played a great shortstop too. What can you complain about? So ultimately, between him, Alonso, Nimmo's always been solid all year long. And I wanted to talk about this real quick. Because first of all, let's go back to that Braves series because we got to talk about it. Okay, you win 4 out of 5. Okay, after Tom Bryce tells you only 2 out of 5 is okay, you win 4 out of 5. Okay, you get the job done, and not only did you beat the Braves 4 times, you really showed them. Right, you put them, and you said we are the better team. You didn't just beat them; you smashed them. You got them out, and not only that, the best part was on Sunday, and we talked about DeGrom earlier in the show and how happy I was to see DeGrom. But we didn't talk about how great it was to see the Mets kill Spencer Strider and then him cry like a baby after the game. Because ultimately, the Mets, from the start, were making him work. We're making him have to throw pitches and have to, in the first inning, they didn't even score, right? But I remember Spurs started through 30 pitches. And I'm like, yep, they made him work. They already are in his head. And the next 2 innings later, they scored runs, and then Spencer Strider after the game. We lost, and we'll get him in October. Oh, shut up, Spencer Strider, okay, because you're a rookie. All right, and ultimately, the Braves, like I said all season long, have been flourishing on beating bad teams. And the Mets, who have been beating teams all season long, or even though they've had some of their bad teams they beat, they've also shown you they can compete with the big boys, too. So ultimately, the Mets are a confident group, and the last guy who's, first of all, Justin's talking about seeing Vogelback jerseys. You know who I'm seeing jerseys of? Buck Showalter. I've seen his jerseys, and the reason why—
That's the first time I've ever heard of managers' jerseys, people.
I saw a couple of them.
You didn't see Mickey Callaway jerseys being worn around.
Well, no, you didn't. And first of all, you've never seen Buck Showalter's jersey because he always has the pullover over it.
Right.
Well, you see it in the stands because this man has completely turned this franchise around. He's a great manager. You see him always prepared, right? You see him always making great moves, right? Great decisions, always into the game, right? Even at times, his knowledge of the game is better than some of the umpires on the field. So ultimately, having that in the dugout has been huge. So all these things put together, the Mets are a serious contender, and they are the better team, the Atlanta Braves. And what I'm going to say to finish this comment, because I know Tom Bryce is going to come on, we only have to win 1 out of 4 against the Braves in Atlanta, and we'll be okay. Only lose the game. Oh, no, I don't want to hear that. What I want to hear is we're going to win 3 out of 4 games. We're going to push the lead to double digits over them, and we're going to say, bye-bye, Braves.
I'll take the 2 out of 4. I'll take 2. Just give me 2 out of 4. Listen again. I'm going to say it. Just take 2. You're in Atlanta. You're in their building. Just take 2.
Okay, you know what? 2 out of 4. You know what?
You're on the road. Listen, not for nothing. You're on the road. They got a good lineup.
What I want to say is this. That's the word that I'm thinking about every time I talk about the Mets. And when you have Scherzer in the ground lined up against them again, you got Carrasco's pitched well against them all season, and Taijuan Walker.
Taijuan Walker didn't pitch good against them the last.
But here's the thing. You, Tom Bryce, think that that's going to be a playing factor in him not doing well. I actually think Taijuan Walker getting bullied last time by the Braves is going to make him want to pitch better this game.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is going to be, I think, because the back and forth between both the teams, I think it's going to be a very, very interesting. But you know what? I got a bunch of comments, and I really want to get to them because I'll come back to some of this back and forth about myself and the Brute Force. But Joey Bostrom had a good thing to ask, and I see Justin and John Gonzalez went back and forth on it. And Joey says, I wanted to get you guys' opinion on the Keith Hernandez situation, what he said about the Phillies and how he refuses to do the Phillies games. I mean, Robert Rusk, I see you nodding your head. I'll come around to the rest of the guys. But what do you make of that?
So I just think sometimes Keith says things without thinking about them. Things just pop out of his mouth. And, sometimes it's just like he's having a conversation with Gary Cohen and, no one else is listening. So now it started this big thing with the Phillies. But you know what? Actually, the Phillies, though, they're not taking it too badly because they respect Hernandez. But, it's just something Keith says stuff like that all the time. Like he wants the game to be over because he doesn't want to get caught in traffic.
I've heard that during the telecast. I've heard
stuff
that.
like that. So, I laugh at it.
Got to feed his cat, I've heard in the past, right?
Yeah.
That was one of the other lines.
That's just Keith being Keith. And, that's all. Because if you remember, I was watching the game when he was saying that. And then he started to stutter a little, probably thinking to himself, what did I just say?
Well, I think he probably did think that. I think he did.
So I saw it. He was, and I heard it. He was stuttering. So I don't make too much out of it. I just think it's Keith being Keith, and sometimes he just says things that pop in his head. And you know what? That's what makes it interesting too. So I don't think it's a big deal.
For you, Bill, you think it's a big deal, the whole Keith Hernandez thing? Obviously, different things he said about the Phillies and how they play on the field and the way they play the game. But you make anything of that?
Okay, first of all, we'll start nothing Keith said was wrong. I mean, the Phillies are a bad team. They don't play well. They're not fun to watch. Their defense is atrocious. I don't think it was wrong. That being said, I don't think it's a huge deal. I think, had a player said that, yeah, it would be bulletin board material. I don't think anybody really cares what, the SNY announces outside of New York. I don't think the players – I hope they're not paying attention to it. If you're paying attention to what you got,
Well, I'm going to tell you that I actually think that – and this is, again, somebody that does a lot of professional wrestling. I do think that the Phillies locker room, they heard it. I don't know if it's locker room quite material, but I can tell you, trust me, those guys – I can tell you, I speak with a lot of wrestlers, and they feed off that stuff. I could see – that there's certain guys that could take that a certain way. I don't know if it'll be locker room material like you said, but I think they heard it.
Yeah, I'm sure they heard it. I don't think it's, it's a long season, and I think the announcer talking off the cuff, I don't think it's really going to get, it's not going to be the reason the Phillies win a series. Or the
right, I could live with that.
Come back from down 11 games, nothing like that, even tonight, I mean, they won, but it's not like they were a dominant team, you know?
No, they won a game 2-1 in extra innings. I mean, listen, it's just one of those things. It was a pitcher's duel, and I mean, for you, the brute force, and I would love to get your opinion because obviously you've been a player, and I know that guys do hear these kind of things, and I think people are lying if they don't think that those players didn't hear those comments in the Phillies locker room, whoever it might be. I mean, as a player, you use that to kind of get you on the field and extra motivation. What do you think, the brute force?
Yeah, well, first of all, just to address that, Tom, the players definitely heard it. I mean, the Phillies,
100%,
Phillies players definitely heard it. They know about. I mean, this is the 2022 with social media. They obviously heard it. Okay, but there's nothing with this. I don't make nothing of this. I mean, first of all, Rob said it. Keith is being Keith. I mean, he does this stuff all the time. You know, and I actually love it because the Mets have dominated the Phillies all year long. So, you know, he should say, well, they suck at fielding and they can't do this, right? And I don't want to watch it. And Keith Hernandez, if anybody, was a great fielder, so he knows what good fielding is. He's seen it. So in the end, and the other thing is, this is what I want to say too. Is Keith Hernandez the first person to critique the Phillies on how they can't field? I mean, there's plenty of people that have done so.
You did the brute force this year. You did.
Oh, I did. Of course I did. I've made fun of everybody on the Phillies for the most part, including that ugly fanatic who I hate, still hate.
I still don't get why you don't like the Philly fanatic. I even kind of like the Philly fanatic.
I'll give you reason after reason why I don't like that damn fanatic.
I know you said it on air.
But in the end, listen, they know it, okay? And you know, listen, Keith Hernandez said it. They're not a good fielding team. They've heard it. Everyone said it. Okay. Part of their motivation, and as a player too, like I've heard it. I've heard people say I can't shoot, I can't dribble, blah blah blah. I wear goggles. Like I've heard it all. And you know what? It's just motivation. Okay. And in the end, right, your weaknesses and what you want to get better at. So if you're on the Phillies, right, it just tells me, hey, we need to continue to get better at fielding the baseball. We need to do better, right? That's simply it for me. So I don't make a whole lot of this. You know, it's again, Keith always does this. He always says things, and that's what makes it entertaining. In basketball, it's the same thing. Who does everybody like to hear in the pre and post game? Shaquille O'Neal, Charles Barkley. Why? Because they say out of the box stuff all the time to make it interesting. That's what Keith Hernandez does, and that's what keeps people wanting to listen to him. And right, sometimes he says ridiculous stuff, but Mets fans know that's what Keith Hernandez is all about, and that's all that personally matters. Who gives a damn about those Phillies fans? Their announcers are horrible anyway. They stink. Their mascot stinks. Okay? And their locker room.
Yeah, I think was it Tom McCarthy who used to do it for the Mets, right? For a couple years.
John Kruk. Give me a damn break with John Kruk. All right?
Yeah, I kind of John Kruk. I kind of could be take it or leave it. Yeah, I'll give you that. John Kruk to me.
So in the end, listen, the Phillies, you know, they could use this as motivation. Their locker room's in a good place right now. But don't worry, the locker room cancer is on his way back, and that will be the ultimate demise of the Phillies because Bryce Harper's ready to come destroy it. He'll come and get his pretty numbers. Okay, he'll bat .315, he'll play right field, but he will ruin that locker room, and the Phillies will go downhill when he comes back. I'm telling you right now. Chris Mazzea laughs at me, Justin Gianelli laughs at me. I don't give a damn. It's true, and you'll see it. The Phillies are at their peak right now, and just wait till Bryce Harper comes back. They'll fall down, and they'll choke just like they will, and we all know they will. They'll make the playoffs, but they won't go far, Bryce Harper.
But that'll be a big deal for the Phillies. Listen, making the postseason is a big deal, but I got a whole bunch of comments. I am backed up on comments, so let me read off some of these. First, Justin Gianelli says, not going to lie, I thought it was funny shade. This weekend, he's in St. Louis for the 40th, which I did hear during the Met game yesterday because I was listening to the game, the 40th anniversary of the 82 Cardinals World Series team. But next weekend, he's just not working. Today, the Mets weren't on SNY. They were on Apple TV, so we couldn't did the game Friday anyway. John Gonzalez says that's pure nonsense. You're getting paid to do all games. Love Keith.
No, he's not.
Okay.
He's not. His contract's like half the games in the schedule. Him and Ronnie both do about 100 games. They're not getting paid to do all the games. They don't do all the games. I don't think we can hear you, Tom.
No.
Yeah. Tom, your microphone's off.
Now, you're right. He doesn't get paid to do all the games, and neither does Ronnie, because in their contract, they have a certain amount of games off, which is, the norm in Major League Baseball nowadays. They don't do all the games. That still can't hear you.
No. Still getting you. That's all right. In the end, listen, we'll say it again. Keith is the man. Gary Keith and Ron, it doesn't get much better than that. Okay,
Right.
and this is how they operate. And Gary's always laughing at Keith because Keith always cracks these jokes and says these out of the box things. So that's part of the experience. But Philly fans and Philly people, they don't know better. They're dumb. Okay, they're gonna take this one comment and run away with it and have some fun with it. But in the end, come on, they're the Phillies, and they're represented with that dumb fanatic.
All right, well, you and the Philly fanatic, because thankfully my mic is back on here. That does happen with technology. John Gonzalez says, listen to the brute, get the confidence. Yeah, but you know what? Not for nothing. I heard him speak about the Jets. He didn't have the same confidence. So is it confidence?
He wants you to have the confidence.
Team. Yeah, you know what? Let's remember this, though. It's easy to have confidence when a team wins 15 out of 17. Remember the old expression? Yeah, everybody likes a front runner.
Hold on, because I'm gonna get back up John Gonzalez on this one. This word has been up here for weeks. It was up there before this happened. Okay, it was up there when they were struggling.
But they were in first place though the whole season. It wasn't like
It was 6 weeks ago, Tom Bryce, that they were only a half a game ahead, and Tom Bryce was telling me, "Oh, here come the Braves! Right, they're coming, they're coming." And I was telling you, confidence.
But here's where I'm gonna slightly back up the truck and say I never said the Mets weren't not making the playoffs. All I said was when the Mets played the 5-game series, all they got to do is just win 2 out of the 5. All I said in the 3 games was you got to win just 1.
Read the comment again. Read the comment.
Listen to the brute. Get the confidence. That's all.
Just get the confidence.
But I never said the Mets weren't not making the playoffs, though.
No, but you were saying that the Braves, because they were playing quote unquote well, even
they
though
were 36-12 at one point. They won 36 of 48 games. I mean, not for nothing, they did have a 14-game winning streak and win, I think, like 17 out of 20.
All right, and listen, we gave them credit for that, even though we said that they were playing bad opponents. But at the same time,
they played the Nationals like 90 times. Yeah,
for a certain period of time, Bryce, you forgot about how good the Mets are and how the Mets have shown you how good they are and how much better they are than the Braves.
But that's where I'm going to slightly back up and say Billy did make a good point at the very beginning. He said this a little while ago as well. Billy made the point that the Mets had not had a long winning streak the whole season until recently. If you take a step, what do we have? The 1 4-game winning streak about 2 or 3 weeks ago prior to this winning streak. Other than that, the whole year, they've been winning series, winning 3 out of 4. So they really hadn't had that long run. Like the Yankees had the long winning streaks. Houston had the long winning streak. The Phillies have had a big run. Obviously, we spoke about the Braves. The Dodgers have had the long run, right? All these teams had the long runs, the Mariners, the Orioles. The Mets didn't have that until now. Well, I would just say, though, to be fair, going into this, the Braves were the ones that had the run. And all I said, I didn't say, hey, the Mets aren't making the playoffs. It's 2007. All I said was that you just need to win 2 out of 5 games. You just want to not get embarrassed. All I said. All I said. But I'm behind in comments. Let me get to a ton of them here. John Gonzalez, we just heard from. So Jodell says, truth hurts. Hoorah for Keith. Hurrah for Cray. Keith, I am just out of words here. John Gonzalez says, bulletin board material. Absolutely. Listen, and I think, and I know for a fact, because I covered wrestling, and I know in that locker room, it was definitely bulletin board material. Justin also says, remember Keith famously gave us the Mets a stroke. Yeah, he has been critical of the Mets in the past. He is I remember plenty of seasons where he knocked guys for not running hard, and he knocked guys for just not in the field looking over and not even being interested. So Keith at times has definitely been critical of the Mets. Listen, I listen to games like everybody else does. John Gonzalez makes a great point here. The big news was Thor is back. He's back. He's back here at Citi Field. And John Gonzalez.
Did you see what he said earlier?
Yes. Yes. Go ahead.
Part of the reason. Sorry, I'll lose my voice a little bit. He said part of the reason he left New York was he didn't want his velocity issues magnified by the New York media.
Yes, I saw that. Yes, I did. What do you guys think of that then? I'll come back with that.
it would have happened. Yeah, it would have been magnified, but no.
Well, Philadelphia's media ain't chopped liver
he
either
signed
right
with
now.
the Angels. Remember, he didn't sign.
For
with
sure, obviously, yeah. The Angels, they don't even know what the game's going on. They're the kind of fans. But what time is it? Oh, okay, I got to be at dinner.
Yeah, and look, and it's fine. I get why you did it, but dude, you left because the Angels offered you more money, and that's fine. They offered you more money. You're allowed to sign the contract, but don't. They offered you $2 million. Well, I wouldn't turn down $2 million to go play for a different team, but they offered you more money. Just say it like that. We all know it happened. No one
Exactly, 100%. People would have said, "Yeah, all right, no problem." I mean,
they offered you more money. Took the offer. Who wouldn't?
Just stop making excuses. Just admit why you signed with the Angels, and let's all move on, instead of all this. And then, on Twitter, he goes back and forth. Well, he hasn't done it recently. I think, people have shut him up. But, going back and forth with people and stuff. We know why he left the Mets. It was for the money. Everything's for the money.
Well, I think guys like Syndergaard and certainly Marcus Stroman, they don't endear themselves when they come across and they're trying to be like the big, bad, tough guy. I mean, Brew Force, you make some of that at all? Because I know I can see you nodding your head.
Yeah, I mean, I get where you guys are coming from. And when I listen to the comments, I tried to be a little bit, on both sides of the spectrum when I was listening to him speak. And listen, he obviously mentioned, the New York media and the pressure it was going to be that if he came back and his velocity was down, that they would rip him apart for his velocity and any bad performances, and he wanted a fresh start on the West Coast. He was saying that. But in the end, listen, the one thing about Syndergaard that people, should give him credit for initially was that he seemed to embrace the New York media and the New York way when he was here. Like, he was that villain. He was the guy that threw behind Chase Utley's back. He was the guy that was getting back him his team. He was the guy who was embracing it. So all of a sudden, just because
the Brew Force Brad Weiss has froze, so certainly we are back to the third world Wi-Fi. Go ahead, Mr. Moroska, before I bring in more comments. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just that I hate when they say something like that all of a sudden he's scared of the media. Where do you want to pitch? And I'm not talking about money-wise or anything. Where do you want to pitch? Especially when you experienced playing in a World Series with the New York Mets. Wouldn't you want to repeat that again? It's more fun winning in New York than winning in,
Well, I think to me, it's New York, Boston.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's with Philadelphia now. To me, those would be the markets that I would say, you know what, that's
Chicago too.
Yeah, and I would say as a bonus because it's a baseball town, St. Louis. I do think St. Louis because of their history. But yeah, I mean, look, unfortunately, it didn't work out and he went elsewhere. Let me get to some more comments. And John Gonzalez says, "You guys seem to always want to mess with me. I meant he gets paid to do as all the teams as in games." So I understand what he's trying to say.
Who would get that, John?
What?
Who would know that's what?
Well, I think what his general point was that he should just do the series because he's employed by the team. I think that's really what he meant to say. I think that's what he's trying to come across. So, I mean, I'm going to actually take a little bit of a side with John and say that's what he meant. And Joey Bostrom says, got to have confidence. Yeah, well, I mean, look, it's easy when you're front running. And we are joined back by the Brew Force, Brad Weiss, who I guess technical difficulties there. Certainly, we're coming up to the end here soon. We'll definitely come up to the end.
I told you it wouldn't be once. It's always twice.
I want to ask you guys one more thing before I get to closing thoughts. And I want to give a mention to Joey Bostrom because I wasn't going to bring this up, but now I'm going to bring it up because obviously the Mets are going to have Old Timers Day, August 27th. And certainly Joey Bostrom was, I think, trying to play on Met fans and kind of doing a tongue-in-cheek. And obviously the rosters were thrown out there for the pitchers and some of the guys were on there. But Joey Bostrom had said, why isn't Bobby Bonilla there at Old Timers Day? Because, he gets obviously $1 million a year pretty much, maybe a little bit more in interest. And obviously with his contract that was, and obviously and Justin Gianelli reminds us that he'll be there. I mean, should Bobby Bonilla, because of his responsibilities, quote unquote, should he be there at Old Timers Day? And as a bonus, are you guys actually looking forward to Old Timers Day for the Mets on August 27th? And I'll go to Billy first.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And Bud Bunny, I mean, look, as funny as it would be to see him there, like get a giant check or whatever, look, he was not well liked by Mets fans until Bobby Bonilla Day became a thing on the internet. It wasn't. No one really. Obviously he didn't have a good tenure here. No one really.
Not at all. Not at all.
I get it. It would have been funny, but this is the first one they're doing in so long that there's so many guys that were while they were here, they can give a chance to take part in it. That I don't think there's any need to really have Bobby Bonilla there for this one. Maybe like future ones when you've done it a few times, and you're having a bit of trouble getting guys to come out for it. Okay, but like for the first one, no. Like get the guys who were loved here and get them in it.
For you, Mr. Maraska, before I get to the brute force, I see him nodding his head here. I mean, should Bobby Bonilla be there at Old Timers Day, hypothetically?
Well, he's going to be playing cards with Ricky Henderson, who instead of being at Old Timers Day. Nah, I don't think so. Bobby Bonilla was a big bust, and 2 times, and the '99 playoffs with the crap,
the card game, yep.
What they pulled. We don't need to see Bobby Bonilla at Old Timers, especially the first one in all these years. So I agree with Billy on that one. We do not need to see him there. We need to see players that we love.
And I'll read off the roster in a second. Yep.
Yeah, and who love playing for that's a big thing for me. Players who loved playing for the Mets and playing in New York. And Bonilla didn't like it. So no, I could care less if he ever shows up at a Old Timers game.
Now, I know that Justin Gianelli will be there August the 27th, but I have to ask the brute force Brad Weiss, who may or may not be there. But, I mean, would you like to see Bobby Bonilla there, the brute force Brad Weiss at Old Timers Day? I mean, what do you think?
Hell no. Are you serious?
I'm serious. I asked you.
Really going to be excited about Bobby Bonilla at an old timers game for the Mets? No, hell no. I hate hearing his name. His name is like a human cancer in my brain. I mean, I don't want to hear his name. Okay, Bobby Bonilla Day is one of the worst days of the year. Every year I got to hear about it.
It's him and Rick DiPietro Day for the Islanders. The same thing.
Exactly. It's not something that Mets fans or anyone wants to be reminded about. Okay, they mock it every year about how the Mets have to pay Bobby Bonilla. Okay, I don't want to hear it. Now people are going to say, oh well, maybe if you bring him to the Old Timers game, maybe he could earn some of that money. I mean, by showing up. I know I don't want him to just show up, okay? Like the guy said, you want to see loyal Mets players who enjoy playing for the Mets, who want to be there, who still support the team, right? And a lot of the guys, I saw the roster. A lot of those guys are the guys who are going to be there. One guy.
It's a good roster, I got to say it. I'll read it off. It's actually like some really good names that I actually would like to see.
Yeah, it's a great roster. The one guy. And, Tom could give us some of the roster. But the one guy, obviously, who's my favorite player of all time, athlete, in any sport, who's not going to be there is David Wright. I'm very disappointed. Very disappointed about David Wright not being there. I mean, that guy is literally – his number will be retired very soon. He'll be back at Citi Field at some point. But just not see him in the Old Timers game, I mean, that's probably the most disappointing thing for me. But besides that, I mean – to see like Bartolo Colon on the list, that excites me. I want to see him.
That's a good one.
So it should be exciting. And to answer your previous question, will I be there? I was actually given an offer to go, so I might be there.
Oh, you know what? Why did I have an inclination that would have been a possibility? And John Gonzalez says that all true statements about Thor. Brute remember his first pitch. Yes, I remember that. Yes, against Kansas City when he threw it behind the ear. Was it? I'm trying to think. Who was it? Was it Lorenzo Cain he threw behind the ear up? Was it Lorenzo Cain, or am I getting somebody mixed up here? Thor.
It was Alcides Escobar.
Alcides Escobar. Yeah.
There you go. Yep. That's why I had said that. And Justin says might as well bring back Butch Husky. I feel like Butch Husky was at a game. Was it last year or the year before, or not the COVID year? But I feel like there was Butch Husky on an SNY game here. Justin also says Alcides Escobar. Yeah, thank you, Justin, for that.
He was on. Yes, you're right.
Yes, I was right because I thought I saw Butch Husky, and Butch Husky did have a couple of good years as a Met, so that wouldn't really necessarily be a stretch. And John Gonzalez says, "Thanks for understanding my point, Tom. I guess the guys don't wear glasses are the ones that get it." Yes, thank you. Yes, I don't wear glasses. Never worn glasses. The only glasses I might have are those Mr. Potato Head glasses. But I will read off the roster. Let's go with the managers here before we get to closing thoughts. Terry Collins, obviously, who you see all the time, still is with the team. Joe Torre, who you really wouldn't think of as a Met, but obviously played for the team a little bit, I think, as well, and also managed them for 5 years. Willie Randolph, that's certainly one that's going back. And Bobby V, of course, you're going to definitely have Bobby V. I'm surprised no Davey Johnson on the manager list there. No Davey Johnson there, huh? Yeah. I guess no, and no Mickey Callaway, right, guys? No Mickey Callaway. And pitchers of note: Bartolo Colon, David Cone. That's going to be an interesting one. David Cone, very interesting. Dennis Cook, of course, I remember him. Ron Darling, well, duh. You got Steve Dillon. Didn't really know anything much about it. El Cid, that'll be a fun one. Sid Fernandez. John Franco, of course, Graves and owned John Franco. Also former Staten Island, lived in Toad Hill. John Franco, of course, know very well. Doc Gooden, Mike Hampton, of course, 2000 Mike Hampton, who famously left the Mets to go to the Colorado school system for his kids. We have here Jay Hook, original Met. Terry Leach. Wasn't he the guy that went like 11-0 one year or something like that, or 7-0, whatever it was, or undefeated one year as a reliever? Al Leiter, nice to see him back. Ed Lynch, of course. Pat Mahomes, well, that's going to be a big deal because, well, it's not, unfortunately, the Pat Mahomes, Patrick Mahomes. Pat Mahomes Sr., John Matlack, of course, who was honored last year by the team, Roger McDowell, Bobby Ojeda, of course, who worked for us at SNY, Jesse Orozco, Glendon Rush, our old friend Glendon Rush, who I interviewed 3 years ago, Johan Santana's back, Doug Sist, Steve Traxel, the human rain delay. Boy, you better make sure you're prepared for a while there. Billy Wagner and Turk Wendell, nice moves here. Infielders of note, Edgardo Alfonso, but that's a good one there. Wally Backman, of course, Rico Bronya, I'm surprised. That's an interesting one. Rico Bronya, who had a short cup of coffee. Kevin Elster. Keith, well, duh. Howard Johnson, nice to see Howard Johnson back. Ray Knight, of course. Ed Kranepool, of course, who's missed it, Met, the longest tenured Met in the history of the franchise. Felix Mianu, for a long time, had the franchise record for hits in a single season before that was broken by Lance Johnson, who had, I think, like 5,000 hits that year, 227 hits and like 20,000 triples. And Daniel Murphy, that was the big one. Jose Reyes, listen, you got to have right. If you're going to have Reyes, you got to have right. Rafael Santana, Tim Tuffle, of course, who was a coach for the team for a long time. Robin Ventura and Todd Zeal, well done. Outfielders, Benny Agbayani, kind of like the pre-Daniel Vogelbach, if you think about it. Benny Agbayani, almost very similar to a Daniel Vogelbach. Andy Chavez, of course, was always going to be in Met lore. Cliff Floyd, a couple good years in Met. Steve Henderson, remember him well. Cleon Jones, another legendary Met. Brooklyn's own Lee Mazzelli, Homecrest's own Lee Mazzelli. Grew up, I think, on East 21st Street, if I recall correctly, between Avenue V and W, one of those areas over there. And Kevin Mitchell, of course, traded for Kevin McReynolds, who's not on Old Timers Day, so you would have thought Kevin McReynolds and Kevin Mitchell would have made sense. Jay Payton, kind of career that could have been. He had some couple good years with the Mets, but always was injured, kind of dogged by that Art Shamsky, who I should say didn't have the pleasure of interviewing. I actually interviewed Art Shamsky, and I will say I didn't have the pleasure of interviewing Art Shamsky because I am personally not a big Art Shamsky fan. But congratulations to him. And Darryl Strawberry, of course. Ron Swoboda. Frank Thomas, who hit like 30-something home runs the first year. Yep. Mookie, of course. Maybe still one of the most beloved Mets and catchers. Very quickly, Todd Hundley, who for a long time held the Major League record for home runs for a catcher in a single season before Javi Lopez broke that, and also the Mets record for home runs. Mike Piazza, Todd Pratt, that's a good one. Josh Tolle, they're really inviting Josh Tolle to Old Timers Day? I mean, Josh Tolle? What did he play, like 50 games as a Met? They're really inviting him? You might as well invite, like, Rod Barajas and John Buck.
You need to invite someone who's still young enough that can actually, like, squat and play.
Who was the guy that backed up Piazza all those years? Was it Castro, I think? Was it Francisco Castro, I think, who backed up Piazza? There was somebody that backed up Piazza other than after Pratt. I want to say
it was Pratt for the good,
It was Pratt for a while, then there was somebody else. He had a little bit of power, but he couldn't run. I mean, I'm thinking like just different catches. The Mets had Mackie Sasser would have been the other name I would have thought of, but and John Stearns. Okay, that's all great stuff there. Let me get to a couple of comments before closing thoughts. Justin Gianelli says, I'm not 100% sure, but I heard Davey Johnson hasn't been doing too well. Okay, that would make a lot of sense. And then Justin says, David Wright said in spring training he would not be able to attend. Okay, that also makes sense. And yeah, Jason Phillips was the guy with the glasses who couldn't throw, right? Was that the guy who then they had to move to first base? He was like a big prospect, and they brought him up. He was supposed to be a catcher. Just around the time I think Piazza was trying to transition. I think that was Jason Phillips and Ramon Castro. Yeah, that's the guy, Ramon Castro, who had a little bit of power, but the guy could not run. He was definitely got all that here. And John Gonzalez says he's going to move on tonight. He says, thank you for everybody. He has stuff to attend to. So I certainly want to thank John for tuning in. And yeah, Castro played 4 years as a Met. So yeah, he had 4 years and had a lot of power as a Met, actually. He had a slugging percentage at 450 as a Met. So yeah, Ramon Castro would have been a guy I would have thought of and had a nice career as a backup. All right, all great stuff here. So you know what? We're going to get to closing thoughts here because obviously we have a lot to attend to here tonight on Sportswire Radio. And obviously, our voices, I can tell in Billy's voice and the Brute Force's voice, want to be respectful of them. So, Billy, let me go to you tonight. Let me go to closing thoughts for you. Anything you want to plug, anything else you want to say that's on your mind? And I can't thank you enough as always, and I want to turn it over to you. And the floor is yours, my friend, and fire away.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Happy to be here. Sorry my voice is starting to fail me a little bit.
Sure.
So I'll keep it quick. You can catch me on Twitter at WMCINE. And as for closing thoughts, I'm gonna take a page out of Brad's book. I'm gonna be confident. I think the Mets take at least 3 out of 4 against the Braves and really push them down in the standings. That's my big prediction for the week.
Really? Okay, so Billy, listen, I know that you and the Brute Force have been on the same page, and I know you guys have been on the same page, and I appreciate that. Listen, I'm still going to stick to my 2 out of 4. Just give me 2 out of 4. You're in Atlanta. It's a good ballpark. Listen,
I could live with 2 out of 4.
Listen, 2 out of 4
would not have set me the way 2 out of 5 in New York would have. But I think they get at least 3 out of 4 this series.
Okay, listen, if they get 3 out of 4, God bless them. Listen,
because remember, we were talking earlier with bulletin board material with the Phillies and Keith Hernandez. Spencer Strider talking about how the Mets got lucky with some of their hits. It's also going to be bulletin board material for the Mets this series.
True, and I get all that, but I'm still going to say, listen, I'm going to take the neutral 2 out of 4, which to me was the same as 2 out of 5. Listen, I'm going to stay consistent with that. Let's just get one of these next 2 against the Phillies. Let's go into Atlanta. We take 2 out of 4. Then we go to the Phillies again. We got 3 with the Phillies, right? Right after that, 3 with the Phillies.
4 with the Phillies after that.
We got 4 with the Phillies.
Doubleheader in there.
Listen, the Mets, by the way, the Mets have not had many days off of this. The Brute Force, I'm going to get to you in a few minutes. We're going to get to you. I got you. Don't worry, but Mr. Baraska, I want to give you some closing. Anything else you want to plug, share, say? And I can't thank you enough. And the floor is yours. And fire away, my friend.
I am going to say 3 out of 4 also. I don't want to hear any of this 2 out of 4 like last time. I want 3 out of 4. What I really want is for them to go into Atlanta and sweep those guys and just crush them.
If they do that, listen, if they do that, the Brute Force, he's going to be on his pedestal like it would be almost him beating a Shiva his last game at SJC if that would have happened. So
but
that's how that would have been.
That's what I want to see. I don't want to hear 2 out of 2. None of this, settling for that kind of stuff anymore.
But you have a sizable lead, though. I mean,
but I don't
make it bigger.
I want to see them destroy the Atlanta Braves. I don't care. A sizable lead. I don't care about any of that. I want to see them destroy them, especially in Atlanta. I want to see those fans quiet in that stadium. No chopping going on. None of that stuff. And that's what I want to see.
Well, they don't. To be fair, the fans in Atlanta, I will say this. The fans in Atlanta don't support their teams like the fans in New York, Philadelphia, Boston. Because all the winning the Braves have done, you always see like empty seats in that ballpark. I mean, they're like fair weather fans almost. Though they don't even care.
So I want to see 3 out of 4, and that's that. Anyway, if you want to reach me, I'm getting a lot of followers like you guys have seen. It's R. Maraska on Twitter and Rob Maraska on Facebook, and another great show. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely, no question. All great stuff there. And also, I have here another comment, and Justin Gianelli says they didn't even sell out Game 1 of the World. That was my point. Listen, that was my point. I remember one series. It was before COVID, I think. It was 2019. Did they play the Cardinals in 2019? I feel like in the NLDS, I think it was. And they didn't even – they had like what? I think it was like, 20,000 they had? Like 25,000 in the ballpark. And it was like a joke. It's like you're in the postseason. I get it, you guys have won, but – I mean, I would want to make sure I do everything I humanly could to get to that ballpark. I mean, just to me, that fan base. I mean, you want to talk about laissez-faire fan bases. I mean, their fan base. I mean, look, they are what they are, but certainly that's here nor there. And Justin, yes, Justin, I'm correct. Thank you for that. Yes, the 10-run first in Game 5 of the NL. I remember that very well because I was so excited to watch that game for whatever reason. And that first inning, and it was like, I remember the announcers. They were like, well, maybe they got to try this and try that. And that's a point where if you're an announcer, that's the worst position you could be when a game is over already. So thank you, Justin, for pointing that out. But certainly, we know we haven't saved the best for us, but we've saved the most confident person, certainly for sure, and the biggest person of them all. That is the brute force Brad Weiss, who I know has a lot of things to say on his mind, including some WNBA and the New York Liberty and obviously his beloved Mets, and I'm sure much, much more that is on his plate. So without further ado here, I turn it over to the brute force, who certainly knows the drill, and the floor is yours, my friend, and fire away.
Yeah, Tom, thank you for another great week of the show. Thank you, Billy, Rob, of course, for coming on. We definitely had a shorter number today, people, but it was another great show as always. So thank you guys for another great week and a lot of fun. And certainly a lot of confidence on this show, as there should be. All right? So you can follow me, of course, on Instagram at bweiss20, on Twitter, searching Brad Weiss20, and on Facebook, searching my name, Bradley Weiss. Of course, I just want to talk about a few different things. Number one, I'll just get to exactly what the guys are saying. You guys know I've been sick of hearing Tom Bryce be conservative with 2 out of 5.
Well, let me tell you something. I just want to say, you have been piling on me the entire week. You and several us. I've heard my name mentioned by this professional wrestler and that professional wrestler on their page. I heard Gareth Angel basically say Tom Bryce, call out Tom Bryce. I have Andre Decker call me out yesterday. I mean, Sportzwire was mentioned on the Nonstop Action Wrestling page. I mean, boy, you are taking a page out of the playbook of all these wrestlers that who come on to my show, by the way, my station, and then want to take a time and knock me. I even had a wrestler, the Brute Force, by the way. He actually made a character off me. So at this point, everybody's piling on. So go ahead. You do you. And he disappeared, the Brute Force. That's clearly because he had that was, you know why that was poetic, because the Brute Force Brad Weiss, he piled on so much on Tom Bryce, like everybody else was, and now his internet froze. So we're gonna wait for him to come back on it, because I have a feeling that he is definitely going to come back on it, because he's definitely got a lot to say here. And certainly, yes, the Brute Force, I see it, and as certainly John Gonzalez would say, we'll have that freeze for him. So we're certainly waiting for the Brute Force here, and certainly while we do that, I do want to give a huge shout out to Craven Rage from Wrestling Championship Entertainment, as Craven Rage has now requested he wants to come back on and certainly address a few things. So we'll bring him back on this coming week. And certainly while we wait for the Brute Force, I'll give some closing thoughts here. And certainly if you are on Sportswire Radio, you will get at 12:30 a.m. a brand new Pinstripe Chronicles marathon. So you'll get all of that. We'll also be live tomorrow night with our DJs. That is Thomas Clark. I look forward to Thomas Clark. I also want to thank Desmond Johnson from Tobacco Road Sports Radio. We certainly look forward to having their show played on our station. Also, our stuff played on there, so I thank them. Also want to thank our friends over at ProZone Gaming Division for their hard work in supporting PZGD is the hashtag. Thank you to all of them. We'll also be back here Monday afternoon, and there is the Brute Force Brad Weiss, so I can wait here for the closing thoughts. So we're going to start this again, the Brute Force. We're going to start over. I'm going to give you closing thoughts. You know the drill. Anything you want to say? Without further ado, fire away.
All right. Thank you, Tom, for another great week of the show. Thank you, Billy, Rob, of course, for another great week. Even though we were short numbers, as I always say, it's always a great show. Always a lot of fun talking to you guys. So thank you, certainly. You can follow me on Instagram at bweiss20, searching Twitter on bradweiss20, and searching Facebook, Bradley Weiss. So there's a couple things I wanted to touch on, like I said, before I got cut off for the 40th time tonight. All right, I didn't want to hear any conservative talk. We want to, just like John Gonzalez said, we want to bring Tom Bryce on the confidence train with Rob, Billy, Justin. We want to bring him on the train. And, he's kind of got 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And we need to get him off. Okay? So it will help this week when the Mets win 3 out of 4 in Atlanta. He's not going to have much more to say about the history books with how we struggled against Atlanta, because we certainly haven't struggled against them this year. He won't have to say much about the record because our record is great. So ultimately, we'll see what happens, but I'm as confident as ever in the New York Mets because, one, they've proven it to us. They're 30-plus games over 500. They've played great baseball, and they've been fun to watch. So I'm just excited to see the rest of the season. And even though, everybody's put Tom Bryce on blast, including myself, all right, it's all in fun, and we're just going to make sure that Tom Bryce gets on the confidence train, all right? Even though the thing disconnected behind me, I don't care. Confidence is always up there, and it's always going to be up there for the rest of the season. And speaking of another matchup between Atlanta and New York, tonight, the Atlanta Dream played the New York Liberty in Atlanta in a very, very big game, pivotal game, and the New York Liberty came out with the win, which means that the New York Liberty plays Sunday at the Barclays Center, which I am dying to go to. The Liberty win, they're in. The Liberty lose, they might be out. So it's going to be a big game at Barclays Center in the final game Sunday at 2 o'clock. I'll certainly be there. We'll see who else will be there. But I'm working on getting to that game because that's a huge game. It's almost like a playoff game against Atlanta. And we need to show
It is a playoff game. That is a playoff game.
And we need to show Atlanta not only in baseball who's boss, but in the WNBA who's boss. Show Atlanta who is the team that's going to make the playoffs and who's the team that's going to be better. That's the New York Liberty in the WNBA. So certainly happy about that tonight as well. Of course, I'll give a shout-out to Level Up as well since I'm repping the shirt. And I was just
also, make sure you give a shout-out to Kelly Dempsey because I'm sure you saw the news.
Yes, so
Kelly Dempsey.
I will say I've been holding it in because I've known the news for like a month or so now. But Kelly just officially announced that she's taking the varsity coaching job, girls coaching job at her alma mater, Hicksville High School. Kelly obviously is extremely well deserving of this. She was a two-time county champion at Hicksville, obviously an all-county, all-conference player. She was terrific, and she's obviously a very well-respected coach here on Long Island, especially with making waves in women's basketball. So it's huge. I think it's a great move from Hicksville High School to bring her in as the varsity coach of the girls, and they have a great mentor to learn from. So congratulations to Kelly. I'm extremely proud of her and the way that she's gotten, to be now with all these different things.
And making waves every time I look up on Twitter. I think it's Tuesday nights. There's a Twitter space with Kelly.
Yeah, she's doing a fantastic job. So shout out to Kelly, of course, here on the show. She's a supporter. She's been on the show before.
Oh, love Kelly.
Definitely, for sure, all of that. But like I said, women's basketball, let's make sure the Liberty get in the playoffs. Let's be excited. Sabrina Ionescu's a stud. And like I said, one last time.
She had 36 points against Dallas two or three nights ago. Was it 33 or 36 points, something like that? She had she had
a big night, but she's been great all season. I mean, she's a triple-double machine. I mean, she's unbelievable. So I'm excited to hopefully go see that game on Sunday. But I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to the Mets. Looking forward to a lot of great things, including
that's going to be a hot ticket Sunday. I tell you what, that's going to be a good sports day.
I'm having a tough time getting them. I'm trying to get the tickets, but there's going to be a lot of people there. So I'm going to do my best, Tom.
Yeah, I got a feeling. I tell you what, I know, unfortunately, Anthony Finkel, who's in the state of Florida, he's here till, I think, Sunday night. He's not going to be there. And unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be there. But I am looking forward to, hopefully, a postseason game, maybe to make our way to the Barclays. And that would be actually a pretty cool feat, playoff basketball. Last time I was at a playoff game at the Barclays Center was 2019 with my brother Sean. Nets 76ers, game 4. It was the Sunday afternoon game, if you remember. That was, I think, a 2 o'clock game, I think it was, a 2 or 2:30 game, if I recall correctly. And my brother and I, we lucked out. We got really good seats. So hopefully you get a good seat. So that'll be a hot game for Sunday. That'll be a hot game. So that'll certainly be a hot thing here. And
I'll just leave it with one word, Tom Bryce. Confidence. Remember it.
I will definitely remember that. And I also want to give a shout out before we go, because I remembered. Now I'm glad. Before I go here, I have to mention Jason Facina and our 5 Towns Sound women's and men's soccer teams, because they've started to camp. And in fact, we've been invited to camp next week. I don't know if I can make it. I will try my best, but camp has been starting up, and they're going to have full camps, I think, each day, 4 to 6, I think, throughout the week. So certainly we'll see if we can make it out there. I know Coach is dying to see us. We'll figure it out here. And I also wanted to give a shout out to my very good friend Steve Solanke, who unfortunately shares me the news that Nunzio's Pizza here on Staten Island is serving its final slice after 80 years. So I'm kind of disappointed. I kind of heard the rumors of that, I think, yesterday or the day before. over at Joe and Pat's, another local hub here in Staten Island, and it looks like that is say it ain't so, but I wish I could have got there, but I certainly congratulate the Whitaker family on their history here for Staten Island, and I thank them for that. Also, Joey Bostrom says, great show again, guys, great job. Thank you, Joey, for all of your support out there in the friendly confines of South Beach and Staten Island. And Joey, I got to ask you have any turkeys on your block? Because I feel like every time I see somebody in South Beach, they're always telling me I see a turkey. And Justin says, great show. Can't wait to be back soon. Thank
Feel
you.
better, Justin. Feel better.
Feel better. I hope you feel better, Justin. We obviously hope that we see you soon. Also, want to thank again John Gonzalez of the Sports Authorities Group. John, of course, does a great job for us. Everybody, please. And Joey says here, Joey answered my question. He says, yes, I do. You know, Joey, I heard somebody that told me, I think down the block from you, that they actually, where Joey lives, they have turkeys that hang up on the tree branches. They actually just like hang there all day, all evening, and they have like loads of them. So hopefully Joey's not dealing with too many turkeys out there, but we love South Beach. We love the friendly confines of South Beach, and especially where Joey lives. I won't say his street, but I know where he lives. But have to see you soon, bro. It's been a long time. Can't remember the last time when was the last time I saw you, Joey Bostrom? I feel like the last time I saw you was like definitely before COVID. So obviously we got to make that happen one of these days. Also, thank you to Anthony Finkel, Sports Authorities Group. Make sure you follow them on Facebook at the Sports Authorities, and also sportnarium.com/player. We will have more coverage here from the Pinstripe Chronicles, their marathon with the boys here in about 20 minutes. And also we'll be back here Monday afternoon, Monday evening with the mysterious Mr. B and the unforgettable Andre Decker. Also want to give a shout out to my very good friend Josh Bailey, who now is a licensed CDL driver. He is now a commercial driver, and he passed his test, and I made sure I would give him a shout out, and he's been listening, and I want to thank Josh Bailey. In fact, Josh Bailey was the first ever guest in Sports Report history, so I have to give Josh Bailey a huge shout out. It was him and Joseph Rosas, Joey Rosas, of course, from Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, kind of similar to South Beach, and they were the first and second guest ever in Sports Report history, so I want to thank those guys for their support, especially Josh Bailey. But I want to thank everybody for watching, listening here on Sportswire Radio. I am with Billy McInerney, formerly of Elite Sports, Rob Maraska, and Mr. Brute Force, Mr. Confident, Bradley Weiss, who you can follow, BWeiss20 on Instagram, WMCINE on Twitter for Billy McInerney, R. Maraska for Rob Maraska on Twitter, and, of course, the Brute Force, Brad Weiss, also the head coach for our Plainview JFK Hawks boys JV team, also the Long Island Nets, Long Island Brew Crew, Level Up, you name it, he does it all, the Brute Force, and of course the legendary SJC New York Golden Eagle. I am the host of the Sports Report, the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryson. Thank you everybody for watching and listening here on the #1 global radio station here, Sportswire Radio. We'll be back here Monday afternoon, Monday evening, and we'll be back here same time, same bat channel, 9:30 p.m. next Friday. Good night, everybody.